Chapter 41. What kind of experience would it be to eat your own melon? Ding Chochio, a veteran fan of the first-tier streamer Yunshu in the livestream industry, who was also a netizen with the username, "Are you teaming up to steal babies today?" expressed that this was really confusing behavior. Ding Chochio was a hand control fan. After inadvertently watching Yun's livestream more than 3 years ago, she was deeply attracted by the streamer's flawless hands. Even if the content of the livestream was not something she was interested in, she still happily followed the livestream every day and even shared it with many of her fellow fans. They didn't have to do anything and only had to look at those hands. For a hand control fan, this was the greatest benefit. Later, Yun's cute baby appeared, and Ding Chochio's adorable nature was stimulated. While licking her hands as a benefit, she chased after the baby and screamed. Her fondness for the baby was just like her username. Every day, she wanted to steal the baby and raise it at home. She was one of Yun's first fans. It could be said that she had watched Yun grow from a young and inexperienced streamer to a famous streamer with millions of loyal fans. She also had the mentality of a mother towards Yun. And as a veteran fan who had fallen into the trap because of her hands, it could be said that she remembered the lines, shapes, and characteristics of Yun's hands clearly. Perhaps she was not as familiar with the uniqueness of her hands as she was. Ding Chochio usually only hung around in the forums. Occasionally, she would go to Weibo to watch the trending topics and gossip. A few days ago, when Miss Shunyan's photos were circulating on the internet, she was busy working overtime and did not pay attention to the news online. Tonight, she finally had some free time and found that the internet was so lively these days, so she watched with interest. She saw a lot of netizens' comments criticizing her, but she did not express her opinion. She only felt that the comments made her think that she had done something heartless. Halfway through watching, she was too sleepy and fell asleep. When she woke up the next day, she remembered this news and immediately picked up her phone to watch it. In the end, the direction of the situation changed overnight. It was obvious that the situation had reversed. When she clicked on the video on the trending topics, her first reaction was to look at the hands of the person in the video, and then, Ding Chochio was instantly stunned. This was her family's Yun. She was eating her own melon. Ding Chochio was a big fan among the fans. He was also very active and had a lot of followers on the forum. At the same time, he was also the manager of several fan groups. As soon as her status was posted, the other fans started to tease her about whether she had secretly climbed the wall. Ding Chochio did not reply. Instead, he took screenshots of the video and uploaded them to the group chat. Then, he dug out the photos and short videos that the netizens had taken from the previous hot searches and placed them in the group. The group was silent. Then, countless exclamation marks and a few curses filled the screen. This must be Yun. It's really Yun. I had a vague feeling when I saw the video, but I'm not sure. Me too, fuck. Yun is indeed more beautiful than I imagined. What a beauty. I knew Yun was a great beauty. I can do it. I announced that from today onwards, Yun is my wife. Thank you, everyone. Even though Yun had only shown her hand during the live broadcast and occasionally showed her figure, it might be difficult for ordinary people to associate the little fairy who often appeared on the hot searches during this period of time to be Yun. However, the angle of the photo that Ding Chochio took from the video was inexplicably similar to the one they were familiar with. They used their spirit to search for the truth to compare. This hand was exactly the same. Everyone immediately came to the conclusion that this was their family's Yun. The photo was circulated in several thousand people in the group chat. The netizens were all excited and licking her face. Most of the fans said that they had become husband fans and wife fans. Yun had been unwilling to show her true face, causing them to only be able to imagine. Now, the heavens were on their side. They were really happy about this. Today was destined to be a carnival for Yun Duo fans. They licked her beautiful face. As they licked, someone suddenly realized that something was wrong. Wait, is this the time to lick her face? Countless comments flooded the screen. Only then did everyone remember. Fuck, their Yun was being bullied. Why were they still in a daze? Roll up your sleeves and go. Fu Yunrua had also encountered anti-fans on her way to fame. However, The composition of her fans was not the same as the composition of other streamers. It might be related to the content of Fu Yunruo's live broadcast was about orchids. Orchids had been a symbol of elegance and nobility since ancient times. Since ancient times, famous people also loved orchids. Therefore, people thought that raising orchids was an elegant act. Other than those who truly loved orchids, only those who had money and time would raise orchids. Therefore, a considerable portion of Fu Yunruo's fans were rich. Among these rich people, one was richer than the other. From the fact that Fu Yunruo's fans often left messages in her private messages that they wanted to buy orchids at a high price, or the photos that she took showed an independent greenhouse that raised orchids. Although Fu Yunruo repeatedly emphasized that they rarely spent a lot of money in the live broadcast room. However, once there were anti-fans who had the rhythm to slander Fu Yunruo, they did not waste any time and directly threw the person to the front page of the popularity rankings. Most of Fu Yunruo's fans were workaholics, and there were even retirees from the generation of grandparents. These people were independent financially and had their own judgment. They would not be easily misled. When the anti-fans posted a comment, there would be a row of reasonable rebuttals below that left people speechless. The anti-fans were so angry that they doubted their lives. Other than those who would reason with you, there were also those who would find hackers to hack their electronic devices and plant viruses. There were also those who used the law to speak and directly sent their own legal team to appear. In the end, the anti-fans would rather return the money than accept this order. These fans were too scary. They actually had a legal team, and there were more than one or two of them. After that, the streamers in the live broadcast world did not dare to offend Fu Yunruo. Their attitude was to take the initiative to befriend her. No matter how brainless the fans of other streamers were, they did not dare to be headstrong. Of course, Fu Yunruo kept a low profile and did not cause trouble. The fans of other streamers would not provoke her fans. They were all very elegant and easygoing. But now, their Yun was being bullied in a place that they did not see, and she was being bullied so miserably. In an instant, the fans with well-developed connections directly asked people to inquire about the situation. The rich ones asked their subordinates to investigate the truth of the matter. In less than 30 minutes, Fu Yunruo's basic information was presented in front of them. When Fu Yunruo was a streamer, her information was kept very confidential. They did not take the initiative to investigate. Now that her real identity had been exposed, she seemed to be in the same circle as some fans. Some fans had heard of this name before, but they were not familiar with it in the past. Once they integrated the information, they found out about Fu Yunruo's life in the past 20 years. Then, they compared the amount of information in the video. They were all 1,000-year-old foxes. How could they not see the problem? It turned out that their Yunru had led such a miserable life in the past. They were instantly furious. In the past, Yun was bullied by others because no one protected her. But now, it was different. If they wanted to bully Yun, they had to ask for their permission first. Not long after, a series of hot searches suddenly appeared. Hashtag flourishing snowlotus hashtag if feng shui is not a mistress hashtag feng shui rua changzhuyu is a natural couple hashtag feng shui rua bullied by vicious stepsister hashtag miserable life of mother and daughter who married into a rich family hashtag the first 19 hot searches were all about feng shui. It was very impressive. Only one video firmly occupied the first spot on the hot search list. Yunduo's fans said, "You sent our Yun onto the hot search list to increase Yun's fame. We will repay your kindness by sending you onto the hot search list for free and returning the favor tenfold. We will definitely not let you suffer a loss." Just looking at the trending topic, it was really a trending topic for feng shui. However, the comments under the topic didn't seem right. Hashtag flourishing snowlotus hashtag oho. Her original name is actually feng shui lotus. I'm laughing so hard that I'm looking for her everywhere. Ha 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 ha. Hashtag flourishing snowlotus hashtag this name is really too appropriate. Hashtag feng shui rua changzhuyu is a mistress hashtag how can you say that feng shui is a mistress? She just couldn't help it because of love. Too cruel, and unreasonable. Hashtag feng shui rua changzhuyu is a natural couple hashtag today is another day of envy for the love between a famous female star and a rich man. Hashtag miserable life of mother and daughter who married into a rich family. Hashtag to be honest. I also want to live such a miserable life. Feng Shui Ruo and Changzhu Yu had been on the hot search list many times in the past. For example, Changzhu Yu did something for Feng Shui Ruo. However, when they clicked on it this time, they, who were prepared to eat dog food, felt that something was wrong. Today is another day of crying for beautiful love. Please be together and don't come out to harm others. Sister Shue is really like her name. She's as pure as a snow lotus. In this world, only Changzhu Yu is worthy of you. They're a natural couple. They're a perfect match. This scumbag man and bitch. No, this golden couple is a perfect match. Please be together. They scrolled through the comments and looked at the video at the top of the hot search list. This video contained the ethics of a stepmother and a stepdaughter, the two stepsisters fighting over a man, the gossip of a rich family, and the movie queen Feng Shui Ruo. The amount of information in the video corresponded with the hot search list below. It was a stark contrast. So the Fu family had a daughter? Feng Shui Ruo's mother was a stepmother. Feng Shui Ruo married into the Fu family, and Feng Shui Ruo was just a stepdaughter. It turned out that Changzhu Yu was the fiancé of the real daughter of the Fu family. Later on, he hooked up with Feng Shui Ruo with a stepmother. You have a stepfather. The ancients didn't lie to me. Like mother, like daughter. The original daughter was bullied by the stepmother and hid in the deep mountains and forests, but she still didn't let her off. Everyone loved to talk about the secrets of rich families. Many netizens dug up the secrets. The past that the mother and daughter of the Feng family deliberately avoided was dug up. Oh, it was said that the daughter of the original wife was very vicious and bullied the mother and daughter of the Feng family for many years. Everyone in the circle said that the mother of Feng Shui Ruo was a good wife and a good mother. Only Fu Yun Ruo was extremely vicious. But you say she did something evil? She bullied her stepsister and stepmother. If not, why would her ex-fiancé scold her for being stupid and vicious and take pity on her poor sister? However, the so-called bullied person was enjoying the life of a rich lady and had a good reputation. The other had the support of the Fu family and the Chang family and was doing well in the entertainment industry. The so-called bully could only live in the remote countryside and rely on planting flowers to survive. I have an idea. Everyone looked at the name that was hanging on the hot search list for a long time and felt that the golden couple was nonsense. The dog food that they had eaten in the past was stuck in their throats, and they were so disgusted that they almost vomited. A large number of snowballs came to empty bottles, but in front of the cloud powder, they were weak and vulnerable. Shue Ruo is not a mistress. She is young Master Chang's true love. True love is not guilty. That's right. How can you say that she is a mistress? You are too unreasonable. Shue Ruo is so pure and kind. How can you slander her? Oh, I hope your boyfriend can find another true love. When the time comes, you must bless them and fulfill their wish. True love is not guilty. Upstairs, you must be joking. How can someone like her have a boyfriend? Oh right, if your father brings his true love to your mother one day, you must persuade your mother to fulfill their wish. That is not a mistress. That is your father's true love. True love is not guilty. There were a bunch of replies and likes below. The passers-by were amazed. Where did these fans come from? Their words were so sharp. 666. The passers-by ate the fresh and juicy melons and watched with relish. They couldn't stop watching. The incisive and sarcastic comments in every topic were an eye-opener. When did Weibo have such smart netizens? Oh, so they were from the livestream industry. What? So the eldest daughter of the Fu family was planting flowers in the deep mountains and forests to survive and earn money through live streams. In the end, she became popular. Fu Yun Ruo was the first-rate streamer in the livestream industry. She was the one who made the video that became popular a while ago. She was the one who raised the flowers. Fu Yun Ruo was the little fairy from a while ago. She was so beautiful. Her words were so smart in the video. Indeed, fans were cooked with steam. The onlookers surged into the livestream industry curiously. In an instant, Fu Yun Ruo's popularity soared. Fu Yun Ruo's fans were divided into 3 groups. One group had sharp words and argued with 10 people online. One group was the rich fans who spent money to smash the trending topics for their yun. The last group was the middle-aged and elderly fans who were unknown but called their juniors or old friends to get Feng Shuiruo's resources. Of course, Feng Shuiruo still didn't know that her resources in the entertainment industry had shrunk infinitely. She was still enraged by the news online. No matter how much money she spent on the trending topics in the video, she couldn't take it down, even if she used the Chang family and the Fu family to pressure her. She almost went crazy. She called the person who took the video that day but couldn't get through. She was so angry that she smashed her phone. He actually dared to post the video instead of destroying it? How dare he? Since that was the case, he couldn't blame her. Feng Shuiruo picked up her phone and was about to make a call when her manager called. She lost her cool and said, "The information in the safe is missing." What? Feng Shuiruo's expression changed instantly. She trusted that person so much because she had something on him. She wasn't afraid that he would betray her. It turned out that he had sided with someone else. No wonder. Feng Shuiruo's first thought was Siyu. Other than him, no one else would go against her. The trending topics and the paid posters definitely had something to do with Siyu. Feng Shuiruo said coldly, "Can you find out who did it?" "Check Siyu." Feng Shuiruo was halfway through her sentence when another call came in. She looked at the caller ID and immediately said to her manager, "Okay, check it out and let me know the results. I still have something to do. I'm hanging up." Feng Shuiruo hung up her manager's call and called out, "Mom." She sounded a little sad. Then, she heard something and her eyes lit up. Fu Zonghong felt that the employees in the company were a little strange. In the past, when he walked past the office, the employees couldn't wait to avoid his gaze, afraid that they would be noticed. But now, he always felt that the employees' gazes were subtly drifting over. Fu Zonghong turned around and glanced at them. Everyone hurriedly avoided his gaze and lowered their heads to focus on their work. Fu Zonghong walked to the elevator in confusion and his assistant pressed the button. Fu Zonghong looked down at himself and asked his assistant, "Is there anything wrong with me today?" His assistant pushed up his glasses and answered, "President Fu, there is nothing wrong with you." Fu Zonghong frowned and deep wrinkles appeared on his forehead. He didn't say anything else. The elevator door opened with a ding and he and his assistant walked into the elevator. After the elevator door closed, one of the employees put down the documents in her hand and asked the colleague next to her, "Hey, do you think the rumors on the internet are true?" "I think it's very likely." Another colleague leaned over and said, "I really couldn't tell. When Mrs. Fu came to the company, she seemed quite friendly to Wenwan. I always thought that the current Mrs. Fu was the first wife. I thought that President Fu only had one daughter, Best Actress Fang." The employee who had just joined the company for 2 years said, "She had envied President Fu and Mrs. Fu for being a loving couple. If Feng Shui was in the entertainment industry, she would have taken her mother's surname. So there was another daughter in the Fu family. She was the real Miss Fu." An old employee who had been working in the company for more than 4 years knew a little about the past. She recalled and said, "President Fu didn't like that Miss Fu. Every time she came to the company, she would quarrel with him." Another old employee added, "Yes, every time Miss Fu was mentioned in front of President Fu, he would get angry. After a while, no one dared to touch her. In fact, if the rumors hadn't spread widely on the internet, they wouldn't have remembered that there was such a person. When they saw this Miss Fu online, they were in a daze for a while. It took them a long time to dig out memories of this person from the depths of their distant memories. But the image of the Miss Fu in their memories was already blurred. It was just like when a person grew up, they would forget the people they met when they were young. They had only met Miss Fu a few times. Now that it had been more than 4 years, it was normal that they couldn't remember her. Now that they thought about it, they could only remember that they hated Miss Fu very much. They could still imagine the hatred they felt at that time. So this was what this Miss Fu looked like? Only now did they remember him clearly. They were a little dazed. They actually hated this Miss Fu in the past. Why? It seemed to be an unexplainable hatred. Was it because she was always hysterical? Was it because she was always entangled with young Master Chang? Was it because the kind and weak Miss Fong couldn't get married with the person she liked? It seemed that young Master Chang was Miss Fu's fiancé at that time. Something didn't seem right. One of the employees said weakly, "I think." I think so too, ahem. At this moment, a cold-faced female supervisor coughed and the office instantly quieted down. They lowered their heads and sat in their seats obediently, working seriously. Everyone felt very guilty after being caught gossiping about their boss in public. The female supervisor glanced at them and left in her high heels. They didn't talk anymore, but secretly used their phones to browse the news online. The more they read, the more they felt that their worldview had been changed. Fu Zonghong arranged to meet with the chairman of his partner company. After some small talk, they finalized the cooperation after 2 hours. After the business discussion, Fu Zonghong invited him to play tennis to relax, but President Jiang declined. President Jiang sized up Fu Zonghong and suddenly said earnestly, "President Fu, everyone knows that you are a workaholic, but to a man, family and career are equally important. You can't neglect your family for the sake of your career. That's not good." Fu Zonghong was confused, but he still replied seriously, "I'll remember that." Fu Zonghong didn't have any business meetings in the afternoon. He wanted to go back to the company, but he suddenly thought of President Zhang's words and asked the driver to send him home. Mrs. Fu, also known as Fang Wanning, was taking care of the roses in the yard. When she saw Fu Zonghong's car driving in, she was surprised. She immediately turned on the sprinkler in her hand and went over to greet him. "You're back so early today?" Fang Wanning took off Fu Zonghong's suit jacket and hung it on the hanger at the entrance.
Yes.
Fu Zonghong replied and walked towards the sofa. Fang Wanning poured him a cup of tea and asked with concern, "What's wrong? You don't seem to be in a good mood. Is there something bothering you?" Fu Zonghong said, "Nothing." He rubbed his eyebrows. His work today was going smoothly, but he was inexplicably frustrated. Fang Wanning stood behind him and massaged his shoulders. "No matter what, you have to remember to take care of your health. Otherwise, if Shui Ruo finds out that I didn't take good care of you, she will nag at me for a long time." Fu Zonghong relaxed his body and relaxed his frown. "Shui Ruo is so filial. How is her filming going?" Fu Zonghong didn't like the entertainment industry, but if Fang Shui liked it, he couldn't interfere too much. The Fu family didn't have any entertainment businesses, and he was in the business sector, so he couldn't help too much. Fortunately, the Chang family had shares in an entertainment company. With the Chang family taking care of him, he was relieved. Fang Wanning hesitated for a moment. When Wan said, "Very good. It will be over in a few days. You have to ask her not to take on any jobs so soon. She should stay at home and accompany you." Fu Zonghong noticed that the hands on his shoulders had stopped. He turned his head and asked with a frown, "What's wrong? Did she get bullied?" With the Chang family and the Fu family around, who would let her get bullied? Could it be that kid from the Chang family? No. You know how well that kid from the Chang family treats Shui Ruo. Old Fu. Fang Wanning hesitated for a moment and said, "There's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" "Didn't Shui Ruo go to the countryside to film a show? She saw Yun Ruo there. Shui Ruo wants to persuade Yun Ruo to come home so that she can give us a surprise. When she called me just now, I scolded her. This child is already so old, but she still doesn't know any better. She should have told us immediately when she found her sister. We could have picked her up personally." Mr. Fu was stunned when he heard Yun Ruo's name. However, when he heard the last sentence, he immediately said angrily, "Pick her up personally? Is she still a 3-year-old child? She doesn't even know to come home herself after so many years. Do I have to go and invite her?" Fang Wanning patted his hand gently and said, "What are you talking about? Are you still angry with the child? Yun Ruo hasn't heard from her for so many years. Aren't you the one who misses her the most? You know that the child has some misunderstandings about us. No matter what, she is still your daughter. You can't let her suffer, right? Did I let her suffer? Didn't she ask for it?" Fu Zonghong snorted coldly. "Did she bully Shui Ruo again? What a waste of a year. She still doesn't know any better." He waved his hand and left angrily. He went upstairs directly. "Old Fu." Fang Wanning called out to him from behind. Then, she shook her head helplessly. However, when he heard the last sentence, he immediately said angrily, "Pick her up personally? Is she still a 3-year-old child? She doesn't even know to come home herself after so many years. Do I have to go and invite her? Fong Wanting patted his hand gently and said, "What are you talking about? Are you still angry with the child? Yun Rua hasn't heard from her for so many years. Aren't you the one who misses her the most? You know that the child has some misunderstandings about us. No matter what, she is still your daughter. You can't let her suffer, right? Did I let her suffer? Didn't she ask for it?" Fu Zonghong snorted coldly. Did she bully Shuirua again? What a waste of a year. She still doesn't know any better. He waved his hand and left angrily. He went upstairs directly. Old Fu. Fong Wanting called out to him from behind. Then, she shook her head helplessly. However, when he heard the last sentence, he immediately said angrily, "Pick her up personally? Is she still a 3-year-old child? She doesn't even know to come home herself after so many years. Do I have to go and invite her?" Fong Wanting patted his hand gently and said, "What are you talking about? Are you still angry with the child? Yun Rua hasn't heard from her for so many years. Aren't you the one who misses her the most? You know that the child has some misunderstandings about us. No matter what, she is still your daughter. You can't let her suffer, right? Did I let her suffer? Didn't she ask for it?" Fu Zonghong snorted coldly. Did she bully Shuirua again? What a waste of a year. She still doesn't know any better. He waved his hand and left angrily. He went upstairs directly. Old Fu. Fong Wanting called out to him from behind. Then, she shook her head helplessly. When it came to personal defamation rumors, the fans had asked their own legal team to send a letter. Oh, the studio was still useful. The fans contacted the studio and asked for a letter from the authorized lawyer. Fu Yun listened to Tian Tian's explanation and was a little distressed that she had been caught off guard. She didn't want to disguise herself to go shopping one day. However, since her fans recognized her, she couldn't lie to them and say that it wasn't her. Moreover, she knew that her fans were very good. Since they had already confirmed it, it meant that they had evidence in their hands. Fu Yun asked Tian Tian to keep an eye on the situation online. When one definitely couldn't appear on the internet, especially at this time of chaos. Tian Tian told Fu Yun not to worry. The fans knew their limits. Moreover, all the videos about Wenwan on the internet had disappeared. Wenwan had appeared on variety shows before, but now, all the videos about him were gone. There was no trace of him on the internet. Fu Yun was relieved when she heard this. She looked at her own activities. Many of them were written descriptions. Even if there were short videos, they only showed her back and she didn't care about them. Fu Yun went to the internet to look at the news. The negative comments about her had disappeared. She took a look. Many of the netizens' comments under the trending searches had familiar IDs. It was obvious that they were from her fan group. Fu Yun took a look and was amused by their comments. She thought that although there were many weirdos in this world, there were even more people with good values. Compared to the fans who scolded people with sharp words without using vulgarities, she was still far from them. She took a look. The fans were still very rational. Although Feng Shui was on the trending searches, she also read their comments. There were no rumors or slander at all. Everything they said was the truth. Compared to the so-called facts that Feng Shui had distorted in the past, what the fans pointed out was the truth of the matter. Now, on the internet, it was equivalent to publicly executing Feng Shui. It was rare for her to take the initiative to search for her account. Only then did she see the sentence that made her feel extremely disgusted. This hypocrisy was almost overflowing from the screen. However, the comments below were not from her fans. Instead, it was a bunch of mocking comments. Fu Yun saw that the fans knew their limits, so she didn't care too much. Perhaps it was because her fans were generally older and had already formed their values. Most of their interactions with her were from an equal point of view. They treated her like a friend and treated her like a junior. Fu Yun always felt that her fans were more fans of the 11 pots of orchids she raised and Wenwan. The way they spoke to those flowers, and Wenwan was more like a fan. Those flowers and Wenwan's popularity in the live broadcast was not low. She deeply suspected that they were not only raising flowers, but also her son. Moreover, they all knew that she was a low-key person. They rarely mentioned her name in public and deliberately downplayed her existence. Fu Yun thought to herself that they really understood her. They knew that she didn't like to be mentioned together with Feng Shui, so they didn't bring her into the discussion. Logically speaking, the matter of her exposing her identity would cause a lot of attention in the live broadcast circle. However, she looked around the forums and saw that there weren't many discussions about her. It seemed that the fans were very self-aware and helped to suppress the popularity. However, some of her colleagues and friends on the platform sent messages one after another. Firstly, they were teasing her. Secondly, they were concerned and showed their support for her. What made Fu Yun the happiest was that when one was not brought out, Fu Yun also joined a fan group. It could be said that this group had been around not long after she started live streaming. They had already discovered that the one in the variety show was their Zai Shui. The messages on the screen kept refreshing. Basically, they were all shouting that they wanted to steal Zai Shui. There were also a lot of crying and shouting that they didn't see the video. They didn't see Zai Shui's cute, smart, and cute little face. They could only look at the proud descriptions of other fans who had seen it. Fu Yun had a puzzled look on her face. Why did it seem like they weren't the ones who contacted to take down the video? However, she couldn't figure out who was so capable. She could only suppress her doubts in her heart. Not long after, Tian sent a message with a bold exclamation mark. Fuck! That scumbag actually dared to publicly support that bitch on Weibo. He actually dared to say that about you. He's simply shameless. Tian seemed to be very irritable. After a while, she disappeared. It seemed like she had personally gone to tear that scumbag apart. Fu Yun went to take a look. She found that not only did the Chang family publicly express their support for Feng Shui, but also the artists under Orange Entertainment. They hinted that the rumors on the internet were all rumors and hoped that someone would stop before going too far. In addition to Feng Shui, Orange Entertainment had several A-list celebrities and some so-called famous directors and brands. After they publicly supported Feng Shui, the originally one-sided public opinion turned into a tug-of-war. The flames of war instantly spread everywhere. The entire internet was in a state of frenzy. No one in the fan group said anything. They must have seen the comments on the internet. They rolled up their sleeves and rushed to the battlefield again. Fu Yun was very touched to be silently cared for and protected by so many people. She posted on Weibo and the forum at the same time. Everything I had in the past has been taken away by you. I'll protect what I have now. Then, she replied to Chang Zhuyo's Weibo. Don't misunderstand. I chased after you in the past because you were my fiancé. I didn't want what belonged to me to be taken away. As for now, I don't want it anymore. Since I've already thrown it into the trash can has to be properly packed. Don't let the trash fly out and pollute the environment. Fu Yun thought that since her fans were so stubborn, she couldn't embarrass herself. She wasn't the original owner of the body who had nothing. Her friends, family, and all the people who supported and loved her were her source of confidence. Less than a minute after she posted, CU reposted her post. Everyone has a responsibility to protect the environment. Then, she liked another post on Weibo. Like a signal, her Weibo was quickly reposted and liked by many famous people in various circles. They also encouraged her. God is fair. He gave you the hardships of the first half of your life, but he will also give you the happiness and sweetness of the future. Good luck, little girl. The Orchid Association and the Queen of the Music Lu Ji, who she had worked with before, also reposted her post. They said that only a person with a pure heart could cultivate the most spiritual flowers. Even the famous streamers in the live streaming circle reposted and liked her post. There were even some who she had only heard of and had never interacted with before. Even the official account of Panda live streaming platform and Apple Entertainment's official account reposted her post. Other than that, there were also many rich second-generation heirs who were active on the public platform. There were even some people in the circle who directly apologized to her on the platform, saying that they hated her because of a misunderstanding. They even said a lot of overboard things and hoped that she wouldn't mind. Fu Yun was stunned. Was she that impressive? She touched her little heart that was overly frightened. Wenwen kept sticking to Fu Yun's side and looking at her eagerly. Seeing that she was busy, he was anxious and wanted to look at her, but he also knew that he couldn't disturb his mother. He thought to himself that if he had the chance, he must secretly take a look at his phone. He really wanted to know the news on the internet. Fu Yun noticed that Wenwen, who was beside her, was wholeheartedly sticking to her side. She couldn't help but say gently, Wen, the children have already asked you to play with them. Aren't you going to play with your friends? Since the morning, the children had already called twice, but Wen refused to go out. Fu Yun realized that Wen seemed to have returned to the clingy state when she was young. She was like a little tail, following her wherever she went. In the past, when the child didn't stick to her, she felt disappointed. But now that she stuck to her, she felt her heart ache. Even if Wen was smarter and braver than the average child, she was still a child after all. She would definitely be frightened when she saw the repulsive adults. Look at how scared she was. Fu Yun's heart ached. She hugged Wen and rubbed her, comforting her again and again. Wen shook her head and said seriously, I want to accompany my mother. He had to keep a close eye on his mother. If that woman Feng Shui was still here, what if she had any bad ideas and he didn't protect his mother well? He had seen too many dark sides. Sometimes, some people were really scary. Just a word, a look, or a seemingly careless action could destroy a person. Wen didn't have a cell phone, so he didn't know the situation online. But even Grandpa Mei, Grandma Mei, and the other elders in the village knew about it. This meant that the situation online was very serious. If Feng Shui was a movie queen, she would definitely have a lot of die-hard fans. Some die-hard fans were really irrational. As long as their idol showed an expression of being bullied or wronged, some extreme die-hard fans would do cruel things for their idol, such as disfiguring her or even murdering her. He met a lot of such people in the future. One of his friends in the entertainment industry expressed her dislike for Chang Shui AI in public because Fu Wen hated Chang Shui AI. She didn't expect that Chang Shui AI's die-hard fans would splash sulfuric acid on her and attack her viciously. In the end, she had to leave the entertainment industry and go abroad. Although she repeatedly said that she didn't blame him before she left, he couldn't get over this hurdle in his heart. Even after he heard from others that she was living well abroad, like daughter, like mother. His mother was so innocent. If she was targeted by Feng Shui's die-hard fans, Wen didn't mind speculating about them with the greatest malice. When Wen was extremely worried, Mom, let's get a bodyguard? No matter how careful Wen was, there would always be a time when Wen overlooked something. He looked at his small arms and legs and was even more worried. With his small body, he couldn't protect his mother well. Fu Yun saw that when Wen was like a little adult who was full of worries and couldn't help but pinch his puffy cheeks. This is an adult's matter. Don't think so much with your little brain. Baby, don't worry. Mom will be fine. She thought that when Wen was really frightened, he actually said that he wanted to hire a bodyguard. But how could it be so easy to hire a bodyguard? She thought that she didn't go out much. Other than in the village, she was in the flower garden. Even if there were bad people, someone would come to help as long as she shouted. There was no need for her to be afraid all day. However, Fu Yun felt that she needed to think about hiring a bodyguard. She was worried that Feng Shui would do something to her child. Fu Yun was worried when she thought about this. Baby, don't take or eat things from strangers. If you see someone you don't know talking to you, don't pay attention to them. Immediately run to a crowded place or run into the house to look for adults. Don't go to dangerous places, such as rooftops, highlands, or by the water. Do you understand? Sigh. She really shouldn't think too deeply. The moment she thought about it, she felt that there was danger everywhere. In the past, she could let her child run around without worry. The more Fu Yun thought about it, the more worried she became. She suddenly didn't want her child to go out and play anymore. Yes, it was good for him to stay by her side. Due to the influence of Feng Shui's scandal, the production team stopped filming. Siyu was free and had the time to pay attention to the happenings on the internet. At the same time, he saw the news on the internet and suddenly realized something. No wonder he always had a vague sense of familiarity with Fu Yun. However, he didn't think too much about it and thought that this sense of familiarity was because of something that had happened in the past. Siyu went to the forum again and found a video of the little brat that had been posted a long time ago. Although he didn't see the boy's face, the chubby and round little figure was so likable. Siyu couldn't help but watch it over and over again. Siyu regretted not being able to participate in Wen's growth from a baby to a child who could run and jump. If he had paid more attention back then, he might have realized that he had a son earlier. Wait, Siyu suddenly thought of a problem. Then, wasn't his 11 also in Fu Yun's hands? When he thought about how he had brushed shoulders with 11, he suddenly felt a little heartache. As Siyu scrolled, he suddenly saw Fu Yun's post on the platform. The first thing he did was to forward it and like it and comment on it. He didn't seem to care about how his actions caused an uproar among his fans. Siyu sat for a while and couldn't help but want to go over to the old house. When Xi and Su saw this, he also wanted to go over. I wonder how Sister Roro is doing. Was she affected? Xi and Su felt that inviting Feng Shui to the show was the biggest mistake. Perhaps the show would be disbanded because of her. The impact this time was too bad. The world's tolerance for a mistress was no different from a celebrity taking drugs or having an affair. Once it was confirmed, the only path left was to be banned. However, if Feng Shui was a rich the future daughter-in-law of the wealthy Chang family and was protected by the company, it was very likely that her reputation would be cleared in the end. Xi and Su was extremely worried about Fu Yun. Siyu saw that Xi and Su was sincerely worried about Fu Yun, so he didn't reject him and the two of them went to the old house together. At this moment, the courtyard door was tightly shut. Siyu knocked on the door and a voice came from inside. "Who is it?" "It's me," Siyu replied. X and Su hurriedly shouted from the side, "And me!" Then the door opened. Fu Yun smiled and said, "Why are you guys here?" Then she turned sideways to let them in. "Uncle Yu." Wen was also in the courtyard. When she saw Siyu and Xi and Su walk in, she instantly threw away the stick in her hand and ran over happily. She hugged Siyu's leg and looked up at him happily. Siyu bent over and picked Wen up. He hugged her with one hand and walked into the house. Xi and Su said enviously, "Wen, there's still me." Even if he wasn't as tall or handsome as Brother Yu, he was still standing there so obviously. How could they ignore him? Wen looked over and smiled cutely. She shouted loudly, "Uncle Su." "Yes." Xi and Su instantly smiled. After Fu Yun closed the door, she saw that her son had instantly regained his vitality. She relaxed a little and couldn't help but smile. Then she went into the house and poured tea for Siyu and the rest. "Why are you guys free to come over? Weren't they usually filming during the day?" "Sigh, the show was paused," Xi and Su said nonchalantly. Fu Yun thought for a moment and realized that the incident on the internet must have affected the show. She immediately said apologetically, "I've implicated you guys." "How could we?" Xi and Su waved his hand. "You're also a victim. Sister Ruoro, don't worry. We're on your side." With that said, Xi and Su touched the back of his head in embarrassment. "Sorry, I can't support you in public for the time being." He had no choice in the management company. Every word and action had to be approved by his manager before he could express his views. Fu Yun expressed her understanding. "It's okay. It's good that you can trust me." Of course, she knew that as a public figure, she had no choice. Then she looked at Siyu. "Mr. Yu, thank you for speaking up for me." You're welcome. It's what I should do." She actually wanted to ask if this would affect him, but seeing that he didn't seem to care, she felt that it would be pretentious of her to ask. When one looked up at Siyu's chin and suddenly thought of Uncle Yu easily stepping on the big bad guy, her black eyes turned. "Uncle Yu, can you be Mommy's bodyguard for the next few days?" Fu Yun immediately looked over and said disapprovingly when Mr. Yu was a big movie star. How could he be a bodyguard? He couldn't be so insensible just because Mr. Yu liked him. When pulled a long face and said sternly, "This is a conversation between us men. Mommy, don't interrupt." Fu Yun was speechless. Siyu said with a smile, "This is a conversation between us men?" Xi and Su held his stomach and laughed. This child's words were too funny. When immediately looked over and looked at Xi and Su unhappily. What was so funny? He was very serious and serious. Cough, cough, cough. Xi and Su choked on his own laughter and quickly turned around. He didn't laugh out loud, but his shoulders moved up and down. It was obvious that he was secretly laughing. Fu Yun was speechless. How could Mr. Yu indulge one so much? Siyu asked when seriously, "Then how do you want to hire me?" When one was about to speak when she noticed that she was sitting in Siyu's arms. This would ruin his manly image and not be beneficial to the negotiation, so she asked him to put her on the table first. Wenwen stepped on the table. Her small body was not as tall as Siyu, so Siyu sat on the stool. The two of them were barely at the same height. Wenwen pulled a long face and said seriously, "We will hire you for 5 days." He calculated. 5 days was enough to find a suitable bodyguard. After we find a bodyguard, the deal will be over. Siyu pondered for a moment. Then what can you give me in return? Wenwen looked at Fu Yun and calculated the assets in her hands. With your current value, we will double your salary. You will be paid as much as you deserve for 5 days. Siyu shook his head. I don't lack money. Your reward is not enough to move me. Wenwen frowned. The only thing they could afford was money. Then what do you want? Siyu looked at Wenwen and smiled. Let me pinch your face 3 times a day for no less than 3 minutes each time. Then I will accept your employment. How about that? Wenwen immediately covered her face when she heard that. Her fair and chubby face trembled. It was so cute that it made one's heart tremble. He widened his eyes. He knew that Siyu had always been craving for his face. How about it? Siyu threw out his conditions and waited for Wenwen to make a decision. 3 minutes is too long. Wenwen hesitated. Siyu wagged his index finger. I don't accept any bargaining. Wenwen. Then, okay, I agree. Wenwen thought deeply. Sigh. He had sacrificed a lot for his mother. Siyu smiled. Deal. I want to go down. Wenwen looked at the ground and said. Siyu carried Wenwen and put her down on the ground. Wenwen immediately ran into the room to get a pen and paper. I want to sign the contract. In order to prevent Uncle Yu from going back on his word, they had to sign the contract. Wenwen was very smart. Su heard and quickly ran into the room. I will help you write the contract. Only Fu Yun and Siyu were left in the living room. Fu Yun said awkwardly, Don't take Wenwen's words to heart. She is a child and doesn't know any better. Fu Yun really didn't know what Wenwen was thinking. She actually thought of hiring Siyu as a bodyguard? Siyu took it seriously. I have already promised Wenwen. Of course, I can't go back on my word. Fu Yun. She suddenly felt that Wenwen's current state had something to do with Siyu. She laughed dryly. Wenwen is still young, Siyu said. Even if she is, since I have already promised her, I can't go back on my word. Otherwise, how can the elders set a good example in front of the children? Fu Yun. It seemed like she had to put the matter of finding a bodyguard on the agenda. Wenwen ran out of the room with a red face. She was holding a pen and paper in her hands. On the paper, there was a contract that Su had written. Fu Yun glanced at it. If it wasn't for the fact that the client's remuneration was to pinch the client's face a few times a day for 3 minutes, this would be a very serious contract. Sign it. Siyu took the pen and paper and glanced at the contract. He saw Wenwen scheming. The employment period was clearly for 5 days, but the contract stated that before the client found a suitable bodyguard, he still signed his name without hesitation. When Wenwen saw Siyu signing the contract, she instantly grinned from ear to ear. Hee. Siyu teased. Wenwen, do you know how to write your own name? Wenwen proudly stuck out her belly. Yes, I do. Then, he picked up the pen and signed his name on the client's side. Fu Yun. Although the words were very big and crooked, he didn't lose any limbs. Okay, I'll keep this contract. Siyu folded the paper and kept it properly. Wenwen felt a little guilty when she thought about her own scheming on the contract, so she agreed. Fu Yun was speechless. Mr. Yu knew how to play with her again. Fu Yun sent Siyu and Su away, and then had a friendly conversation with Wenwen. Wenwen, please reflect on your actions. Where did you go wrong? Wenwen turned her head and said loudly, I didn't do anything wrong. Was it wrong for her to want someone to protect her mother? That's right. He thought about it. Most of the villagers were old and young, and they had families to feed. They weren't suitable to protect her mother. Only the powerful Uncle Yu was the most suitable. Yes, his underlings had to be mobilized too. They had to pay attention to whether there were strangers in or out of the village. Is your Uncle Yu a bodyguard? He actually dares to let someone else be our bodyguard? But he agreed. You still think it's reasonable? Fu Yun snorted and was about to continue lecturing her when the courtyard door was knocked again. She stood up and was about to leave when she saw Wenwen move from the corner of her eye. She instantly turned her head. Stand still. Don't move. Wenwen stood against the wall and pouted. Her mother really didn't understand his painstaking efforts. Sigh. Fu Yun let Wenwen off for the time being. She walked out of the door and asked who it was before opening the door. Siyu appeared again. He was standing alone in front of the door with a suitcase in his hand. Fu Yun Ruo. Chapter 43. Fu Yun was puzzled. Mr. Yu, what are you doing? Siyu walked in with his luggage and said calmly, I'm being a bodyguard. Fu Yun was speechless. She almost choked on her own saliva. She said with difficulty, Mr. Yu, Wenwen's words can't be taken seriously. You really don't have to do this. Siyu raised his eyebrows. Was this the prelude to living under the same roof? She felt extremely awkward and could only say clearly, it's really not suitable for an outsider to live with us. Even if she had a few mouths, she couldn't explain it clearly. She didn't want the villagers to misunderstand that she was getting married. Siyu spread his hands. Then I'll be living too far away from the Mei family. If I can't protect you in time, then I won't be a competent bodyguard. He said righteously, we're upright and upright. A few words from others won't affect anything. Fu Yun was extremely distressed. She didn't want Siyu to live with them. Of course, it wasn't that she didn't welcome him, but it was really inappropriate. However, he had Wenwen's golden token in his hands. Fu Yun felt a headache when she thought of the naughty child facing the wall to reflect on his mistakes. When Wenwen heard Siyu's voice, he immediately pricked up his ears to listen outside. He wanted to run out, but he was still being punished. His short little legs moved around, but in the end, he stood obediently. Sigh. He had sacrificed a lot for his mother, but he still had to stand his punishment. Siyu walked in and saw the little guy standing against the wall with his head drooping. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Wenwen, what are you doing? Wenwen looked at him with an aggrieved expression. Uncle Yu, I'm facing the wall to reflect on my mistakes. Fu Yun thought that this big trouble was caused by Wenwen and immediately had a headache. Don't bother about him. He has to be punished for his mistakes. Otherwise, he would be sent to heaven without the sky-piercing cannon. Nodding her head, Siyu consoled. Then you should reflect on your mistakes and try to appease your mother. Wenwen immediately pulled a long face and looked pitiful. She thought that Uncle Yu would speak up for her. Siyu put her hand on the handle of the suitcase, turned her head and asked Fu Yun, where am I staying? Fu Yun's head hurt even more. How could she forcefully refuse? Stay? Wenwen instantly raised her head and looked over, her gaze scrutinizing. Why did Uncle Yu want to live here? For a moment, Wenwen felt a sense of crisis, as if her territory had been violated. Siyu noticed Wenwen's line of sight and pondered. This little guy looks so obedient, but he's actually a wolf cub? Siyu remained calm and collected. If I don't live here, how can I fulfill my duties as a bodyguard? If your mother is in danger at night, I won't be able to make it in time. Wenwen tilted her head and thought hesitantly, it seems to be true. Mother is in danger 24 hours a day. If I only protect her during the day, there is still a loophole. But a child's possessiveness made him instinctively dislike another person intruding into his and his mother's lives. It was enough to have only him and his mother at home. But his mother's safety was also very important. Wenwen fell into a dilemma. If it was a hired bodyguard, he could get someone to build a small house beside the old house. But wouldn't that be bad for Uncle Yu? Fu Yun suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, Mr. Yu, if the news of you living here is exposed on the internet, there will be scandals. Fu Yun remembered that ever since Siyu's debut, there had been no scandals and her resume was clean. If this news were to spread, wouldn't it be a hot search? Siyu said, it's okay. The innocent will know. Fu Yun braced herself and said, then, if you live here, it won't be convenient for you to film the show, right? This was a live broadcast. She didn't want to be on the hot search again. Siyu said, the show's filming has been suspended. There was a bloody storm on the internet. It was like a fight between gods. Regardless of whether they were willing or not, the production team could only suspend the show's filming. Moreover, he heard that Feng Shui had been chased out by the local villagers and could only temporarily live in the house rented by the production team. Among the local villagers, there were many in-laws between the villages. The relationships between the villages were complicated, and they were very particular about interpersonal relationships. And Fu Yun was recognized by Shanghe village as a family member. If their family member was bullied, the villagers would tell their relatives. Then, the relatives would tell their relatives. In this way, wouldn't they know that these people who came to film the show bullied their family member? He heard that the other guests were not doing well in the other villages. Although they were not chased away, they did not cooperate with the show. Only Cu and Xi and Su were not treated coldly because they had a good relationship with the villagers, and Cu had protected them before. It was still unknown whether the production team could continue filming. He looked at the mother and son and seemed to realize that he was not welcomed. Then, he took a step back and said, "If you really mind, I remember that there is a woodshed not far from the old house. I can live there." Fu Yun knew that the reason for the show's suspension was her and Fang Shui's quarrel. She was also one of the main culprits. Then, she thought of the woodshed. It was an old house made of yellow mud bricks from a long time ago. After the original owner made a bright tile house, he moved away. That place became the place where the owner stored the firewood. The house had been abandoned for a long time and was in disrepair. How could anyone live in it? He had good intentions. He agreed to Wan Wen's unreasonable request and kept his word. How could she let him live in the woodshed? Even when it rained, he had to use a basin to collect rainwater. Fu Yun's brain twitched. She immediately said, "How can I let you live in the woodshed? Just stay at home. There are plenty of empty rooms." As soon as she finished speaking, she wanted to bite her tongue and commit suicide. She had clearly rejected him. How could she say that out loud? Siyu curled his lips and smiled. "If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble you." Then, he turned his head and looked at the only male in the house who was being punished to stand. He asked for his opinion. "Wenwen, do you welcome me?" Wenwen hesitated. He thought that it was not good to let his idol sleep in the woodshed. In the end, he nodded. Siyu said seriously, "Then I'll have to trouble you." Being treated as an equal made Wenwen feel like an adult? He subconsciously stuck out his little belly and nodded seriously. "I'll leave the house to you." "Okay." Siyu promised seriously. "Don't worry. I'm here for everything." Fu Yun was speechless. She was defeated. She compromised and led him to the house. "There's a guest room here, but we have to tidy it up before you can move in." "I'm sorry." "It's okay." The layout of the old house was quite big, and there were many rooms. Fu Yun specially chose the room furthest away from their room. Although it was usually cleaned, it still had to be tidied up if they wanted to move in. Siyu followed Fu Yun into the room. Wenwen stood on her tiptoes and looked at their backs as they left. In the end, she could not hold back and quietly chased after Siyu. Fu Yun opened the door and a stuffy wave of air rushed over. She said embarrassedly, "There's no air conditioner in this room, so we can only have an electric fan at night. But don't worry, the temperature is not so high at night." The room was stuffy now mainly because the temperature outside was high during the day. The windows were not open, so there was no ventilation. There was also sunlight shining in through the windows. When the night breeze blew in at night, it would be much cooler. Siyu put his luggage aside and looked around the room. The room was very empty. Other than the bed frame, a cabinet, and a table, there was nothing else. Fu Yun opened the cabinet and wanted to take out the mattress and quilt inside to dry. It was still morning. She could use the quilt after drying it in the water until evening. She was about to do it, but Siyu reached out and took the quilt in his hand first. Fu Yun turned around. Siyu said casually, "Tell me, I'll do it." "Me too." Wenwen raised his chubby hand and said loudly, "He could help too." Fu Yun lowered her head and saw the eager chubby boy. She said with a straight face, "What does it have to do with you? Continue to face the wall and reflect on your past." When Wen's face fell, he still had to face the wall? He could not help but look at Siyu and send a pleading look. Siyu replied with a helpless look. Wen turned around dejectedly and walked away step by step. Sigh. Women were unreasonable. He clearly did not do anything wrong, but he still had to face the wall and reflect on his past. Siyu took the initiative to take over the work and took the quilt out to dry. He carried a bucket and a cloth and wiped the bed frame and table in the room. Fu Yun was not idle either. She washed the bed sheets and quilt and hung them up to dry. When thought about it again and again, he finally finished facing the wall and followed Siyu around like a little tail. Siyu wiped the top of the cabinet, and he used a small cloth to wipe the bottom. He was very active in his work. Because Siyu was around, Fu Yun had already opened the door to the courtyard. She had to admit that with an adult in the house, the sense of security was different. At least in the daytime, she would not think of closing the door. After Fu Yun finished washing the quilt and drying it, she saw that it was almost noon and went to the kitchen to cook. When Wenwen smelled the aroma of the food, he immediately abandoned Siyu heartlessly and ran to the kitchen. He ran around Fu Yun. Siyu, who was suddenly all alone, scoffed. In this little rascal's heart, was food more important than him? After Siyu wiped the room clean, he carried the bucket and poured the dirty water into the ditch in the courtyard. He then went to the sink to rinse the bucket and wash the cloth. There was a knock on the door. He turned around and saw Yuan Xian's round body standing at the door. Yuan Xian looked at Siyu's manly appearance and clicked his tongue in wonder. He walked in and gave him a thumbs up. Impressive. You've reached a higher level so quickly. When Yuan Xian went to the Mei family to look for Siyu, he was told by Xian Su that he had gone to the Fu family to be a bodyguard. He was very envious. He also wanted to be a bodyguard for the young lady and the cute children, but he was too embarrassed to say it. Although he had not been professionally trained, he would not back down if he encountered danger. When Yuan Xian heard this, he immediately thought, is this dog finally making a move? Yuan Xian immediately went to the old house. He did not expect to see Siyu pouring dirty water to wash a dirty handkerchief. Is this still the same clean freak Siyu? Siyu glanced at him indifferently. What's the matter? Hurry up and leave if you're done talking. I won't stay for dinner. Yuan Xian scoffed. Dog, I'm not a legitimate member of this family. Do I have the right to make decisions? Yuan Xian looked around the courtyard. Although the owner of the house had not come out, this was not the place to talk. Siyu washed the handkerchief and hung it on a bamboo fork to dry. He then washed his hands and walked out of the courtyard. Yuan Xian followed him out. The two of them stood under a tree by the fork in the road. Yuan Xian did not get straight to the point. Instead, he sized up Siyu. What are you planning? Does he only want the child, or does he want both the child and the adult? Yuan Xian had been with Siyu for so many years, but sometimes he still could not figure out what this man was thinking. Initially, he thought that Siyu only wanted the child. Later on, he treated Fu Yun differently because she was the child's mother. Now, he was not so sure. This dog had actually schemed to enter the house. Based on his character, if he only wanted the child, there were many ways. He had actually chosen the easiest way to get involved. Could it be that this damn man had developed feelings for her because he had been protecting her for so long? Siyu cast a sidelong glance at him and sneered. What can I be planning? Take care of your own messy business first. Yuan Xian was an average-looking man with a plump figure. He was also very capable, but his private life was a little messy and could not settle down. He was already so old and still had no wife or children. He should take care of himself first. There was so much gossip. Yuan Xian chuckled. You're just a pile of cow dung. Can I ask about it? Siyu frowned and looked at him with disdain. Can't you think of a better description? Was there a pile of cow dung that was tall, handsome, and rich? Oh, Yuan Xian was expressionless. Then you're just a shiny pig trying to steal someone else's fresh cabbage. Siyu calmly changed the topic. How's the matter? Yuan Xian chuckled. Don't worry, I'm handling it. It's all settled. They were good citizens who abided by the law. When they discovered injustice, they would naturally call the police and let the police handle it. Of course, they were true to their word. After getting the video, they would still pay. However, they happened to find out that the person who took the video had been involved in a hit-and-run, so they called the police. They were the ones who had uploaded the edited original video online. The part where the person was beaten up and the child scene could not be uploaded. Otherwise, wouldn't they be providing evidence for the other party to intentionally hurt someone? How good would it be if things were as they were now? Chang Zhuyu had been taught a lesson and had no evidence to sue them. But you don't seem to be of much use. Yuan Xian gloated. He had only found out that Fu Yun was actually a popular broadcaster after reading the news online. He also knew that she was the broadcaster that Siyu had been following for a few years. To a certain extent, Siyu was Fu Yun's fan, even if he did not admit it himself. As Siyu's manager, how could he not know that Siyu would definitely follow the livestream whenever she was free? She would even tip from time to time. She was the only one on his secondary account that he followed. Yuan Xian could not help but wonder if it was because he knew that Fu Yun was the broadcaster that he had been following. His favorability towards her had increased and broken through the favorability level, so he started to have designs on her. However, Yuan Xian gloated. She was not interested in him at all. Even a damn man would have such a day. There's no chance of you being a hero and saving the damsel in distress online. Yuan Xian chuckled. Fu Yun's fans were much more valiant than Siyu's fans. Other than adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes, they were completely useless. Yuan Xian believed that if they got together one day and the fans on both sides did not recognize each other and started fighting, his hundreds of millions of fans would definitely not be able to win against the tens of millions of fans. Those were werewolves who could fight against 100 people alone. Siyu did not mind at all. His secondary account was in the fan group. Although he rarely appeared, based on his status as the #1 pay-to-win big shot in the livestream, he still had the status of a manager. He was also a senior manager of the fan group. This time, he had silently provided a lot of help to the fans behind the scenes. Of course, there was no need to tell his manager this, lest he started to doubt himself and his life. Her image has taken a big hit this time. She won't come out and cause trouble for a while. However, with the Chang family and Orange Entertainment around, it's impossible to stop her from jumping around. Orange Entertainment was very determined to protect Feng Shui. In order to divert the public's attention, they took the initiative to release a lot of negative news. They even revealed the secret marriage of a famous actor under their company. This caused quite a stir, and the netizens' attention shifted a lot. Even so, Fu Yun's reputation as a black-hearted first wife had been cleared. Feng Shui's image had taken a big hit, so she might not be as popular in the entertainment industry in the future. Siyu was not surprised. He felt that given Feng Shui and Chang Zhuyo's extreme luck, they were already much luckier than those who had gone against them in the past. They had successfully kicked her off her pedestal without suffering any backlash. Siyu was deep in thought. Did this mean that their good luck had come to an end? Siyu thought for a while, and finally decided to take it slow. Keep an eye on it. Let the video go down after one more day. Those who should have seen it had already seen it. If the video stayed up for too long, it would trigger the netizens' rebellious mentality. They had to stop before they went too far. Moreover, the popularity online was only one of the consequences. The more fatal consequences were in other places. They would be in a mess for a while. Okay, Yuan Xian responded. Is there anything else? Siyu began to chase him away. If there's nothing else, hurry up and do your work. Yuan Xian could not help but wonder if it was because he knew that Fu Yun was the broadcaster that he had been following. His favorability towards her had increased and broken through the favorability level, so he started to have designs on her. However, Yuan Xian gloated. She was not interested in him at all. Even a damn man would have such a day. There's no chance of you being a hero and saving the damsel in distress online. Yuan Xian chuckled. Fu Yun's fans were much more valiant than Siyu's fans. Other than adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes, they were completely useless. Yuan Xian believed that if they got together one day and the fans on both sides did not recognize each other and started fighting, his hundreds of millions of fans would definitely not be able to win against the tens of millions of fans. Those were werewolves who could fight against 100 people alone. Siyu did not mind at all. His secondary account was in the fan group. Although he rarely appeared, based on his status as the #1 pay-to-win big shot in the livestream, he still had the status of a manager. He was also a senior manager of the fan group. This time, he had silently provided a lot of help to the fans behind the scenes. Of course, there was no need to tell his manager this, lest he started to doubt himself and his life. Her image has taken a big hit this time. She won't come out and cause trouble for a while. However, with the Chang family and Orange Entertainment around, it's impossible to stop her from jumping around. Orange Entertainment was very determined to protect Feng Shui. In order to divert the public's attention, they took the initiative to release a lot of negative news. They even revealed the secret marriage of a famous actor under their company. This caused quite a stir, and the netizens' attention shifted a lot. Even so, Fu Yun's reputation as a black-hearted first wife had been cleared. Feng Shui's image had taken a big hit, so she might not be as popular in the entertainment industry in the future. Siyu was not surprised. He felt that given Feng Shui and Chang Zhuyo's extreme luck, they were already much luckier than those who had gone against them in the past. They had successfully kicked her off her pedestal without suffering any backlash. Siyu was deep in thought. Did this mean that their good luck had come to an end? Siyu thought for a while and finally decided to take it slow. Keep an eye on it. Let the video go down after one more day. Those who should have seen it had already seen it. If the video stayed up for too long, it would trigger the netizens' rebellious mentality. They had to stop before they went too far. Moreover, the popularity online was only one of the consequences. The more fatal consequences were in other places. They would be in a mess for a while. Okay, Yuan Xian responded. Is there anything else? Siyu began to chase him away. If there's nothing else, hurry up and do your work. Chapter 44. Wenwen took a full nap after eating and then went out to look for her friends. He had to tell his underlings to report to them immediately if they saw a stranger. He had to eliminate the danger as much as possible and not let his mother get hurt. Siyu followed the high-spirited children out, but Fu Yun was not the only one at home. Aunt May specially came over to talk to Fu Yun. In order to speak up for Fu Yun, Aunt May learned how to surf the internet and found out about Fu Yun's past. Her heart ached even more for Fu Yun. No wonder he left his hometown and came to such a remote place for a young girl. There was no way to survive if she stayed in that so-called home. No wonder she cried so sadly. She felt that Ruoruo's biological father was blind and deceived. He didn't even want such a good daughter. Aunt May was so angry that her heart hurt. She scolded Uncle May for a few days, but when facing Fu Yun, she didn't mention the past at all. It's good for you to come and stay with you. Aunt May also knew about this. After all, Siyu used to stay at her house. If she wanted to leave, she would always inform her. I'm worried that the villagers will gossip. In any case, Fu Yun felt strange and uncomfortable. She didn't have the experience of being in the same room with the opposite sex of the same age, especially since her situation was special. People on the internet said that as long as they didn't dance in front of her, she could ignore it. However, she didn't want to experience the same thing as when she first came and was discussed behind her back by the villagers. Aunt May raised her eyebrows. Who dares to say it? I'll tear her mouth off. You can't let him stay next door, right? Fu Yun thought about it. That's right. Why didn't she think of letting him stay next door? But on second thought, she felt that it wasn't appropriate. Although there were people living next door to the old house, it was even more inconvenient with a pregnant young daughter-in-law at home. When that child, Fu Yun was helpless. Forget it. She had to quickly ask Tian to help find one or two female bodyguards who were willing to come over. After all, it was inconvenient for a male bodyguard. Fu Yun felt that their worries were groundless, but Wenwen's previous state still scared her. Even if it was for the sake of a child's heart, bodyguards were indispensable. Aunt May knew Fu Yun Ruo's worries. She thought for a while and said, Then why don't I stay here too? Fu Yun Ruo's eyes lit up and she immediately nodded. Okay. Aunt May actually felt that Siyu and Fu Yun were quite compatible, but Siyu was a big star, so she must know many outstanding girls. In her eyes, Ruoruo was the best. However, she still had a child with her after all. Many people minded this point. Therefore, Aunt May suppressed the thought of matchmaking and changed the topic. In the village, Wenwen gathered the children of the village and the neighboring Shaha village. She stood in the middle with a serious face and gave a speech. The group of children, of different heights, all looked at Wenwen with their clear eyes. Wenwen's chubby little face was stiff, and she said in a serious voice, Did you hear me clearly? Yes. The children answered in unison. Repeat it again? Zhuang raised his hand and was the first to say, Don't eat candy from strangers. Dian said loudly, Don't talk to strangers. If you see a stranger entering the village, report it to your parents. If you see danger, run quickly. Wenwen heard that they had all memorized the main points and nodded in satisfaction. Dashan said, Wenwen, Don't worry. We will definitely protect you and Sister Ruoro. Dashin patted his thick chest and then said to Wen, Wen, my aunt chased that bad woman out. He saw it with his own eyes. Wen was surprised. He did not expect this. That woman was actually chased out of the village? Wen felt a little happy. That woman had probably never been treated like this before. After feeling happy, Wen became worried. That woman was so narrow-minded. What if she held a grudge? No matter how united the village was, they might not be able to fight against her. Moreover, they came here to film the show. They had originally signed a contract to donate to them, right? Could they still get the charity money in this situation? The children did not know Wen's conflicted thoughts. They surrounded Wen and asked, Wen, let's go play? You can play whatever you want. Without Wen, they could not play anything. The children looked at him eagerly. Wen hesitated for a moment and finally said reservedly, All right then, let's play for a while. Siyu kept looking at Wen. Seeing that his son was so popular, he was very proud. As expected of his son, he did well everywhere. Wen, who said that he was only going to play for a while, unknowingly played until evening. When Fu Yun came looking for him, the group of children dispersed and went home. Fu Yun and Aunt May chatted for the entire afternoon and tidied up the other empty room. Aunt May only went back after 5 o'clock. Aunt May only came over to stay at night. During the day, she still had to go home to cook for the old man. She would come over then. Fu Yunrua brought the warm bed sheets into the room and helped to make the bed. She even placed the mat on top of the bed. She looked at the sky outside. The sun was about to set. After the little guy went out, he had not returned. It was as if he had left. She could only go out to look for him. On the way, she met the villagers and chatted for a while. After asking where the children were playing, she went to look for them. Fu Yun went to the destination and did not see the children. Instead, she saw Siyu sitting under the shade of a tree. Fu Yun was puzzled. Was a celebrity so free? Didn't she have to rush for work? Didn't she have to film television, movies, and advertisements? He could even take care of the children for the whole day? Siyu saw Fu Yun and stood up. He said very naturally, Are you here to take the children home? Fu Yun nodded. She hesitated for a moment and could not help but ask again, Mr. Yu, will it really not disturb your work? Siyu said casually, No. Seeing that Fu Yun was still very worried about his work, Siyu said, Now is the time for me to rest. My original intention of taking on this variety show was to relax. However, he did not expect that there would be so many accidents. Although he was unhappy that someone he did not like was jumping around in front of him, he was pleasantly surprised. Mom. Wen inadvertently saw Fu Yun and immediately ran over happily. His exquisite and cute cheeks were covered in a thin layer of sweat, and his cheeks were flushed red. Mom. Wen rushed over and hugged Fu Yun's thigh. He smiled and showed his little baby teeth. Let's go home. Fu Yun smiled and held Wen's warm little chubby hand. Siyu walked over and naturally held Wen's other hand. It's time to go home. Wen walked in between the two adults. Both of his hands were held. He turned his head to look at Fu Yun and then turned to look at Siyu. He suddenly felt very happy. Fu Yun was originally looking at the road, but suddenly her hand dropped. She subconsciously tightened her grip and lifted it slightly. Fu Yun turned his head and looked down. Wen's two short legs were hanging in the air. His whole body swayed like a swing. He was smiling so widely that his teeth could not be seen. Ka. Siyu saw Wen playing so happily. He raised his eyebrows and then shook his hand. Wen was swayed like a swing. He smiled even more happily. Fu Yun saw this and quickly stopped him. You can't shake like this. What if your arm dislocates? Fu Yun remembered the things that needed to be taken note of at every age. Such a young child's bones had not developed well and were very fragile. He could not swing his arm. Otherwise, it would easily dislocate. If it was serious, it would affect his future bone development or cause habitual dislocation, so he had to be careful. Wen said coquettishly, Mom, just shake a little, he felt that it was very fun. No. Mom, I love Mom. I love Mom the most. Siyu, who was at the side, saw Wen clinging to Fu Yun and speaking coquettishly. He pinched Wen's chubby body and carried him with both hands. Then, He placed him on the left and swayed back and forth. When Wan was still acting coquettishly with Fu Yun, suddenly, he was suspended in the air. In an instant, his little arms and legs were facing down. His head was also facing down. Then, he was swayed around as if he had hit a big bell. Siyu swayed for a while. Then, he looked at Wan with a smile on his face. Do you love Uncle Yu the most? Wan looked at Siyu expressionlessly. No, thank you. Fu Yun burst out laughing. Then, she held back her laughter and said, All right, he's already swaying. Let's go home. Siyu looked at Wan, who suddenly had a little mood. He was confused. Didn't he want to be swayed? Why was he unhappy again? When the three of them reached home, Wan immediately wanted to get off the ground. His little body twisted. When he landed, he immediately ran into the house. Siyu was confused for a long time. He turned to Fu Yun and asked, What's wrong with Wan? Fu Yun's lips were still smiling. When she heard this, she only said, It's nothing. Children will be fine after being awkward for a while. Siyu. So, what was the little guy being awkward about? Fu Yun thought for a moment. Why don't you help Wan bathe? Siyu had helped Wan bathe before. He thought that it would be no problem to help again. Siyu agreed as expected. Then, he went to the bathroom to turn on the hot water. Fu Yun tidied up the little guy's clothes and brought them over. When she looked up, the two of them who were at loggerheads had made up again. Otherwise, why would a child's face change so easily in June? When Wan, who was still at loggerheads, instantly circled around Siyu. He wanted to take a bath. He wanted to swim. However, because the little kid had played crazily, he had to rest for a while before bathing. At the same time, he also had to dry the hot water. Fu Yun ignored the two of them and prepared dinner in the kitchen. When Wen's laughter constantly came from the bathroom. The whole house seemed to be bustling with noise and excitement. At night, they had a peaceful and lively dinner. Siyu and Wan played in the courtyard. Fu Yun rested for a while and went to take a bath. After she came out, she washed her and Wen's clothes and hung them under the roof to dry. Siyu hugged Wan and threw him up. Wen's laughter almost broke through the sky. Fu Yun saw that Wan was thrown so high, and she was worried for a moment. However, she saw that Siyu could catch him steadily every time. He looked like he was handling a butcher's cleaver. At the same time, she was relieved and impressed. Sure enough, there was a huge difference in physical strength between men and women. Although Wan was half a head shorter than his peers, his body was full of meat. Her hands were sore after carrying him for 10 minutes, let alone tossing him around like this. Fu Yun noticed that they had been playing for at least 10 minutes. She couldn't help but say, All right, Wan, stop pestering your Uncle Yu. Wan wanted to continue, but he knew his weight. They had played for a long time and couldn't tire Uncle Yu out. Hence, he said to Siyu, Uncle Yu, put me down. Siyu placed Wan on the ground. Wan immediately ran over to Fu Yun's side and coaxed her. Fu Yun coaxed him for a while, then said to Siyu, Mr. Yu, you can go and take a shower. Siyu nodded and entered the house. Fu Yun sat on the chair. Wan also climbed up and squeezed into Fu Yun's arms. After he sat down, the phone was above his head. Hence, he said to Fu Yun in a childish voice, Mommy, I want to see it too. Fu Yun pinched his face, little clever boy. In the end, she still showed him the screen. Fu Yun just started to video chat with Tian. When Tian saw Wen's face on the screen, she instantly greeted him excitedly and her voice became gentler. Wan, have you eaten? What did you eat? What did you play today? Auntie Tian, Wan shouted at the screen and then answered her childish question. The two of them chatted for a while through the screen. Only then did Fu Yun have the right to video chat with her. Tian was reluctant to leave, but she still got to the point. She told Fu Yun the latest news on the internet in detail. The internet was almost evenly matched. Although that incident was still popular, because of the impact of other breaking news, the popularity dropped a lot. Because of Orange Entertainment's crazy actions, everyone in the entertainment industry was in danger, except for a small number of people, which well-known big shot in the entertainment industry did not have a private matter. Orange Entertainment was exposed one after another. It was hard to guarantee that the next one would not be themselves, so everyone hoped that this matter would pass quickly. Fu Yun had already vented her anger, so this matter was over for the time being. However, Tian Tian was still indignant. She felt that Fu Yun had been wronged. Fu Yun changed the topic and talked about finding a female bodyguard. Tian Tian had never come into contact with this level, so she did not know much. She did not know who was trustworthy. However, Panda live streaming platform had a security company working with, so Tian Tian said that she would contact the platform to ask. After Fu Yun agreed, they chatted for a while before hanging up. Then, she logged into the platform of the live streaming account and looked at the private messages and comments. The private messages lagged for a while before the number of unread private messages was calculated. It had already exceeded 9,999 plus. She could not read all of them at all, so she randomly picked a few to reply to and then read all of them. She had not live streamed for a few days. Fu Yun thought for a while and posted a status update, telling her the time of tomorrow's live stream. Fu Yun heard the commotion and looked up. She saw a shirtless man with wet hair wearing only a pair of loose pants walking out. He was still holding wet clothes in his hand and asked Fu Yun, "Where to dry the clothes?" Fu Yun's face turned red. She pointed casually. "You can dry the clothes over there." Siyu responded and turned to walk over. Seeing that there was an empty clothes rack, he took it over to dry the clothes. Fu Yun realized something that made her even more embarrassed. Her undergarments were still drying there. She did not think too much about it just now and only noticed it now. She should have taken it back to her room to dry it. It was too embarrassing. Wen's attention was all on Siyu. He was extremely envious. Her figure was even better than his future. Would he be able to have such a good figure in this lifetime? Wen's eyes turned red. After his jealousy subsided, he thought about it again. In 20 years, he would be in his prime. And when he was in his 40s or 50s, he would probably have put on weight. When one was happy. In this way, Uncle Yu could not compare to his future at all. He was no longer jealous in an instant. Fu Yun saw that Siyu had no intention of putting on her clothes, so she could not help but say, You put on your clothes?" She almost could not help but cover her face. She could not help but look over. One had to know that it was not only women who were beautiful, but men were also beautiful. Siyu looked down at himself, then looked at her fair and exquisite face that was flushed red. It's hot. He had taken a cold shower, but perhaps because he had just exercised a lot, his body was still hot. Although he said that, Siyu still put on his clothes. Fu Yun felt more at ease. Siyu brought out a chair and sat in the courtyard to enjoy the breeze. He held his phone and looked at the screen. One was very curious. She did not know what Uncle Yu was looking at, so she slipped down and ran to Siyu. Then, she hugged his knees and climbed up to sit on Siyu's lap. Wenwen looked up and asked, "Uncle Yu, can I watch?" Wenwen thought, what kind of acting videos is Uncle Yu watching to enrich himself? Or is he reading a script? Siyu looked down at his sparkling eyes. He pressed a few buttons on the screen and showed it to him. It was playing a cartoon that children love to watch. Wenwen said, "Uncle Yu, you're so childish. I don't even want to watch this cartoon." "Why don't you watch it?" "Cats are so stupid. They can't catch mice. If it was a big flower in Zhuang's house, they would have caught it immediately." "Really? They're so good?" "Yeah, look. They already caught it, but they let it go. They're so stupid." Wenwen looked at the video and complained to Siyu while watching it with great interest. Not long after, a voice came from outside the courtyard. "Ruoruo? Aunt May, we're here." Fu Yun answered and quickly got up to open the door. Aunt May walked in with a smile. When she saw Siyu and Wenwen sitting together affectionately, her smile deepened. After Fu Yunrua locked the door, she turned around and walked over. "Grandma May." Wenwen greeted Aunt May happily when she saw her. "Aunt May, why are you looking for Yunrua?" Siyu asked. It was already 9 o'clock. The countryside worked and slept very early, especially for people of Aunt May's age. She went to bed before 9:30. He was quite curious. "Nothing much." Aunt May chuckled. Fu Yun said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that Aunt May will be staying over too. We can take care of each other." "See you." Aunt May sat in the courtyard for a while. Fu Yun saw that it was already 9:30, so she said to Wenwen, "It's time to sleep." Wenwen was awake at this moment. When she heard this, she was not too happy. Wait a little longer. I haven't finished watching this episode, Fuyun said. You won't grow taller if you sleep late. Siyu said. I'll coax the child to sleep. When Wen's eyes lit up, she immediately turned to Fuyun and said, Mom, I want to sleep with Uncle Yu. You'll disturb. Before Fuyun could finish her sentence, Siyu said, It's all right. Fuyun saw that the adult and child were very willing. If she stopped them, she would seem like an evil person. She could only say, Then don't make trouble in the middle of the night by saying that you can't sleep. I won't. Wenwen shook her head like a rattle drum. Siyu carried Wenwen back to the room. Fuyun reminded from behind, You can't sleep after 10 o'clock? Aunt May looked at them with a smile. After they left, she said to Fuyun happily, Look at how well they get along. Fuyun nodded in agreement. That's right. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, Fuyun would not have known that her son would get along so well with someone else. When Siyu left this place, Wenwen would probably cry. Aunt May saw that Fuyun did not think of anything else, so she did not say anything else. Instead, she smiled meaningfully. Not long after, Fuyun and Aunt May returned to their respective rooms. There was no small heater on the bed. Fuyun was really not used to it. However, after tossing and turning for less than half an hour, she finally fell asleep. Early the next morning, Fuyun cooked breakfast and prepared to go to the flower garden. Siyu heard the commotion and walked out. When she saw Fuyun preparing to go out, she asked, Are you going to the flower garden? Yes, the work there is quite busy. I can't leave it all to Uncle Gua. The old man was old and she was worried. It was time to go back. Has Wenwen woken up? No, Siyu replied. Then, she said to Fuyun, Wait for me for a while. I'll go too. Fuyun hesitated. We are very safe there. The flower garden was surrounded by iron nets, and there were surveillance cameras. Ordinary people could not enter. She basically did not take a step out of the flower garden. It was very safe. Fuyun went to wake Wenwen up and carried the sleepy little fellow out. She did not know what time they played. If Fuyun did not hear any movements, she did not care. She believed that Siyu knew what to do. Siyu went to wash up and even packed a set of clothes. She looked like she did not want to abandon her. Fuyun hesitated. Mr. Yu, why don't you stay here? There are no empty rooms over there. Siyu did not care. It's okay. I can stay with Wenwen. Fuyun. Wenwen rubbed his eyes. His eyes were still sleepy. He said to Siyu in a childish voice, Uncle Yu, I'll sleep with Mummy. Siyu. He thought that Wenwen already had a separate room. Siyu looked at Wenwen, who was leaning in Fuyun's arms. He was almost 4 years old. He was not young anymore. Why was he still like a child who had not been weaned and wanted to sleep with his mother? He had a separate room since he was born. He had never slept with his parents. It was time to train his independence. In the end, Siyu still followed them to the flower garden. After Fuyun handed the child to Siyu, she rushed to the flower shed. She had been delayed for a while in the morning. It was almost time. She could not be late. Fortunately, she entered the livestream room 1 minute before the livestream started and turned on the livestream equipment. There were already people waiting in the livestream room. As soon as she turned on the livestream, the gifts started flooding in. There were also many people who sent comments. Yun, I've finally waited for you. I miss you, Yun. Will you show your face today, Yun? Good morning, everyone. Fuyun greeted them and saw the layers of comments from the fans. Many people wanted to see her in person. Fuyun thought that her alias had been exposed, so it did not matter if she showed her face or not. Her fans had helped her so much. She should satisfy their requests. Hence, Fuyun adjusted the angle of the livestream equipment. After a while, Fuyun's face appeared in the high-definition camera. Chapter 45. It was a beauty attack. At such a close distance, they could see the fair and flawless face under the camera even more clearly. Her looks were actually so good. She was so close to the camera that she didn't have any flaws. Instead, she was so beautiful that it took people's breath away. This delicate facial features, this delicate skin that could be broken by the slightest touch. It was simply too beautiful. How did she maintain her looks? Didn't they say that Yun lived in a remote village? Why was she in such a good state? One couldn't tell that she was already a mother. Where did this peerless beauty come from? My heart melted when she smiled. So sweet that it reached my heart. The most beautiful scenery in the world is the moment you look up. Ozzel, I can do it. The girls licked their faces and then looked at their big faces in the mirror. They were envious. They also wanted to be exquisite and beautiful young ladies. But if the young ladies didn't mind, they could do it too. Fu Yun looked up and saw the audience's fancy praises on the screen. She felt a little embarrassed. She felt that the fans were looking at her through a 100-meter thick filter. The screen ushered in another wave of bullet screen comments, and her popularity increased explosively. She thought to herself, how curious are they about her looks? At the same time, the gift-giving notifications kept rolling. In the blink of an eye, she saw several seas of flowers. Fu Yun hurriedly stopped them. There's no need to spend money. If you want to give gifts, you can just give Little Bamboo. Little Bamboo was a free gift given to users by the platform every day. It could be used to give to the streamers they liked. Of course, the streamer and the platform did not benefit from this kind of free gift. Fu Yun saw that the audience's enthusiasm did not decrease and that the gifts were still flying, so she simply set the live stream to not allow gifts. Yun, we were wrong. Hurry up and remove the permissions. I promise I won't give gifts anymore. We'll only give one flower at a time. Fu Yun saw such comments and pretended not to see them. She knew that they would not be so obedient. The audience could not express their love with gifts, so the comments exploded again. They were so dense that they covered the entire screen. Fu Yun Rual was dazzled, so she decided not to look anymore. Then, she started talking to the audience. She looked at the screen and said sincerely, I've read all the information on the internet in the past 2 days. Thank you very much for protecting me. Fu Yun bowed to the screen. The bullet screen was filled with comments saying that there was no need to be polite. It was only right. Bullying my mother is the same as bullying me. I can't tolerate it. If you want to bully my Zai Zai, you'll have to ask for my permission first. That's right. You're my son's mother. Who else would I protect if not you? Upstairs, it's clearly my son who smashed his mother. Come and fight. Come on. Waiting for the fisherman to reap the benefits 2333. The fans were fighting intensely to announce their position as the main wife. Suddenly, several malicious comments appeared on the bullet screen. If Fu Yun did not say anything, the audience who were causing a ruckus immediately shook hands and spoke in unison. Which family's mad dog got loose and ran out to bite people? Don't you know whose territory this is? How dare you behave so atrociously here? I respect you for being a man. Have a safe trip. I won't send you off. Not to mention on Weibo, they could fight 1 against 10 and not be at a disadvantage at all. Now, they came to their territory to behave atrociously? Wasn't that like a little lamb running into a pack of wolves? Not to mention anything else, they could drown these haters with a mouthful of saliva. When the haters came, they were aggressive and were chased away dejectedly. Soon, the bullet screen returned to harmony. They even comforted Fu Yun and told her not to take these comments to heart. If Fu Yun was under their protection, no one could bully her. Fu Yun thanked them again and had a more intuitive understanding of the fans' fighting power. So, when can Zai Zai appear on screen? The audience was still not satisfied after seeing Fu Yun. They still wanted to see Zai Zai. This sentence attracted a wave of agreement. Then, the screen was filled with countless bullet screen comments that wanted to see Zai Zai. Fu Yun looked slightly embarrassed. She did not want Wan to be exposed to the public so early. It had not been easy for Wen's video to disappear on the internet. She did not want Wen's appearance to be leaked again. The audience understood Fu Yun's thoughts and did not insist. They only expressed that it was a pity that they could not see her in the video. Then, they took a step back and said that it was fine if she did not show her face. They just wanted her to say a few words to them. Fu Yun thought about it and felt that this was fine. Hence, she pointed the screen at the pots of beautiful orchids and told the audience that she was going to look for the baby before walking out of the greenhouse. In the morning, when the 3 of them arrived at the flower garden, Fu Yun handed the child to Siyu and ran away in a hurry. Siyu and Wan looked at Fu Yun's back view as she left in a hurry and looked at each other for a moment. Wan waved her hand calmly. Mommy is rushing to work. Mommy had to support the family. It was hard on her. Then, Wenwen said excitedly to see you. Uncle you, let's go plant the orchids. Wenwen still remembered that she and Uncle you had agreed to change the environment to continue planting the orchids. Since they had time now, they could fulfill their promise. When Siyu heard this, he thought, sure. He had not planted orchids in a long time. Maybe it would work this time. Hence, the two of them hit it off. Wenwen brought Siyu into a room in the bungalow to look for tools. He also brought his own set of tools and excitedly went to plant flowers with Siyu. When Fu Yun came over, the two of them were planting orchids on the roof of the bungalow. They had already planted 2 stalks of orchids. The 2 seedlings were planted on a flat piece of soil. The plot of land was quite large, but other than these 2 stalks of orchids, the surrounding area was empty. It made these 2 seedlings look pitiful. Wenwen pointed at one of the less robust orchids and said, "This is yours." Then, he pointed to another seedling that was obviously taller and thicker than the one beside it. "This is mine." When one was a little scheming, he claimed the orchid that looked easier to grow first. Even if the two of them failed again this time, it must be Uncle Yu who failed first. This way, he could save his face. This was Uncle Yu's flower that died first. He had been growing it for a longer time. Siyu saw through his scheming. He did not say that he would give in to him because he was still young. Instead, he said, "But I also want that orchid." Wenwen widened his eyes in surprise. "Uncle Yu, are you going to fight with me?" He could not believe it. "I'm so young. Won't you give in to me?" What happened to respecting the old and loving the young? What happened to modesty? Siyu said, "I'm so old. Shouldn't you give in to me?" When one was stunned, Siyu crossed his arms. "You don't want to give in to me. Why should I give in to you? You think that others should give in to you now. When you grow up, will others give in to you no matter what it is?" When one was speechless, he looked at Siyu and said faintly, "Modesty is a virtue." Siyu said casually, "Correct, modesty is a virtue. You can't give in without principles." When one was speechless, he was still a child. Why did he have to reason with him? Then what do you want? When one decided, he did not treat Siyu as his idol anymore. How could he bully a child? "If you don't give in to me, I'll cry for you to see." When one threatened fiercely with his hands on his hips, Siyu was speechless. Did he think that he would be threatened? Yes. When one looked at the orchid that he had planted again, it belonged to him. His heart was filled with a sense of accomplishment. He and Uncle Yi had exchanged planting experiences and learned from each other's strengths. He believed that they would succeed this time. Although Siyu did not get the orchid that looked easier to take care of, he was still quite happy. He felt that if they changed places, they might really be able to succeed. Fu Yun Ruo walked up to the roof and saw an adult and a child looking at the freshly plowed soil in front of them. He did not know what they were thinking, but they looked happy. At that moment, Fu Yun Ruo inexplicably felt that the two of them looked similar. It was true that one was marked by the company one kept. After hanging out with Siyu for so long, he consciously imitated him. "One," Fu Yun Ruo shouted. One turned his head and was very happy to see Fu Yun Ruo. "Dong, dong, dong, dong. Mommy." When Ruo looked up and asked, "Are you done with work so soon?" "What if I'm not?" When Ruo blinked. He thought that a long time had passed. Seeing that Siyu was there, Fu Yun Ruo was too embarrassed to say anything, so she held When Ruo's hand and walked down the stairs. She said in a low voice, "When, the fans want to talk to you. Do you want to go?" When Ruo tilted his head. Almost without thinking, he nodded his head and agreed. Okay. When Ruo was actually very curious about his mother's live broadcast, but his mother did not want him to be exposed to the public so early. He was a sensible child and had always been very obedient. Therefore, when Ruo had never seen what Fu Yun Ruo was like when she was live broadcasting. When Ruo had always wanted to be a real child, so he did not take the initiative to come into contact with things that he should not come into contact with at his age. He now knew that his mother had been scolded by others online because her fans had helped his mother fight back. Therefore, he also wanted to thank them for helping his mother. Seeing that when Ruo agreed readily, Fu Yun Ruo hesitated for a moment before deciding to respect her wishes. Seeing that when Rua's hands and feet were covered in mud, Fu Yunrua brought him to the tap to wash his hands, feet, and face clean. At this moment, Siyu Rua walked down the stairs. When Rua saw him, he said loudly, "Uncle Yu, I have something to do. I'll leave the rest of the work to you." When Rua puffed up his chest and said proudly, "I'm going to work." From today onwards, he was going to open for business too. Then, he pulled Fu Yunrua and ran towards the flower shed excitedly. I haven't done a live broadcast in so many years. I suddenly miss it." Fu Yunrua nodded at Siyu Rua and smiled as a greeting. Then, he quickly walked towards the flower shed with One. Siyu Rua heard a few words. Were they going to do a live broadcast? He didn't follow them. Instead, he took out his phone slowly. He opened the app skillfully and entered the live broadcast room. The live broadcast room showed that it was in the middle of a live broadcast. The camera was focused on the boss of the 11 orchids. The boss had successfully mutated, and it had also successfully promoted to the #1 favorite of the audience. However, there weren't many people discussing the orchids in the bullet screen. Instead, there were a lot of nervous and expectant comments on the bullet screen. Not long after, he heard some movement in the live broadcast room. After a while, Fu Yunrua's figure appeared on the screen. Fu Yunrua lowered the camera and fixed it properly. After making sure that the camera only filmed Wenwen's neck and below, he said to Wenrua, "Baby, you can come in now." Wenrua walked unhurriedly into the camera with her short legs. Then, she sat on the chair that Fu Yunrua had specially prepared for her. The bullet screen was filled with screams. The audience kept on calling her old and little, Zai Zai, Zai Zai, Zai Zai, and so on. Then, they fancily confessed that Mama loves you and Papa loves you. "You're my Zai Zai." At that moment, a dense barrage of bullet comments flooded the screen like an avalanche. Fu Yunrua almost thought that the live broadcast room wouldn't be able to support such a huge amount of data and would go offline. After confessing to Zai Zai, they were fancily praising her. From her chubby little chin to her little legs, they praised her from head to toe. Even her appearance, which didn't appear on the screen, made the audience jump out of their skin. When Rua looked at the camera and greeted in a serious manner, "Uncle, Auntie, brothers and sisters, hello. My name is One." She introduced herself in a serious manner, but in the audience's ears, she sounded so cute that it made their hearts tremble. In the bullet screen, the audience screamed nonstop. They were so cute and adorable that they flooded the screen. "Thank you, everyone, for liking Mama." As she spoke, Wen made a heart gesture to them. "Love you all." At that moment, the audience from all over the country seemed to have been hit by a little red heart. Their minds went blank for a moment, and they couldn't help but scream in a low voice. How could Zai Zai be so cute? The audience asked for Zai to speak more. They loved his childish voice. Siyu Rua looked at the live broadcast and subconsciously opened the gift box to reward her. In the end, she realized that the gift couldn't be sent out. Siyu typed out a sentence. Why did she turn off the right to send gifts? Fu Yunrua saw the dazzling and obvious question, so she explained, "I'm sorry for making you guys spend so much money. If everyone likes me and supports me, please leave more messages and praise me." In the beginning, Fu Yunrua needed gifts because she lacked money. Now that she didn't lack anything, she didn't want the audience who liked her to spend too much money. Her main source of income now wasn't the rewards from the audience, but commercial value. The additional value brought about by fame. She could accept advertisements to do publicity, cooperate with others, and occasionally help Uncle Gua sell some ordinary orchids. She would occasionally emphasize in the live broadcast a few times, but the fans rarely gave her gifts. Most of the people gave her gifts for free or a few yuan, so she didn't turn off the right to send gifts. However, she felt that the fans didn't listen to her. Perhaps they felt that she had suffered. So many fans silently gave her gifts in support. Fu Yunrua thought about it and decided to turn off the right to send gifts in the future. In the future, she would only accept small bamboos and flowers worth 1 yuan. Siyu frowned, but didn't say anything. He thought to himself, how can this be? I'll tell the platform later to set his account to the highest authority and give him special privileges. After knowing that Fu Yunrua was the host of the live broadcast, He also knew that the main reason why Fu Yunruo started the live broadcast was to earn money to raise the child and buy milk powder. Siyu looked at his status as the #1 reward big shot in the live broadcast. After rounding it up, he was the one supporting the mother and son. This knowledge made Siyu feel satisfied. Sure enough, he had foresight. Now that their relationship hadn't been exposed, Fu Yunruo would definitely not accept his alimony. With this live broadcast, it was different. He could send gifts every day, and it could be considered as a form of support for the family. When chatted with the audience for a while, Fu Yunruo saw that he looked like he was doing it, so she watched silently from the side. When she was almost done pondering, she let Wenwen say goodbye to the fans and then carried him out of the live broadcast. The audience let out sounds of disappointment. They still wanted to continue talking to Zai Zai. That cute and serious little voice was simply too adorable. Fu Yunruo didn't care about the wailing of the fans. After carrying Wenwen out of the live broadcast, she continued her live broadcast. She had already satisfied the audience's request. Then, when Fu Yunruo started her live broadcast as usual, the audience saw that they couldn't stop the old and young, so they soon turned their attention to the other children. Then, they began to discuss how their son had changed today. They hadn't seen him for a few days, and they missed him quite a bit. Siyu watched the live broadcast for a while. He wanted to go to the flower shed to take a look, but he was worried that if he rashly barged in, it would affect Fu Yunruo's live broadcast. Also, if he showed his face here, there would be a topic of discussion on the internet. He wanted to see his 11. Siyu anxiously looked forward to it. His heart was itching. In the end, Siyu couldn't resist the temptation in his heart. After leaving the live broadcast, he walked towards the flower shed. He stood at the door and looked inside. He didn't hear any obvious movements inside. Why are you poking your head out here? Chapter 46. Siyu turned around and saw Uncle Gua standing behind him with a straight face. Siyu stood casually by the door like a cool breeze. He thought to himself, when did I poke my head out to look around? I was just wondering if I could go in. However, Siyu did not say anything to the obviously unhappy Uncle Gua. He pointed inside and asked, "Can I go in?" Uncle Gua frowned. Before he could say anything, Siyu said, "I won't spoil your flowers." Uncle Gua scrutinized him for a while before he nodded reluctantly and emphasized, "You're not allowed to touch my flowers." Siyu promised again and again. He was just short of swearing before he finally stepped into the flower shed with Uncle Gua's permission. When Siyu walked into the flower shed, he saw Wenwen playing with toys quietly in an area surrounded by the flower shed. Siyu had an impression of this scene. He remembered that the first video was shot in this area. Siyu walked over and saw Wenwen playing with building blocks. This time, he was building a wooden house. Wenwen looked up and was very happy to see Siyu. "Uncle Yu." Wenwen saw Siyu and stopped playing with the building blocks. He walked over. "Are you building a house? Shall I accompany you?" Siyu thought to himself. This was a parent-child interaction. Even if it was childish, he was fine with it. Wenwen tilted his head. Actually, he had stopped playing with these toys a long time ago. He had played with them many times, but he was bored and wanted to wait for his mother to come out before he could play with them again. Was Uncle Yu so childish? Not only did he like to watch cartoons, but he also liked to play with these children's toys. Could it be that Uncle Yu had a hard time when he was young? He didn't have any toys to play with and cartoons to watch, so he wanted to make up for it when he grew up. Did he want to regain his childhood? Wenwen looked at Siyu sympathetically. Not everyone was as lucky as him to have a second chance. "Siyu? ? What kind of look was that?" Wenwen patted the long legs in front of her and comforted her. "Okay, I'll play with you." Then, he pulled Siyu's pants and walked into his little world of fun. Siyu walked in, sat down cross-legged, and started playing with building blocks with Wenwen. Uncle Gua was originally observing his precious orchid. When he saw the interaction between Siyu and Wenwen, he couldn't help but frown. It was true that Wenwen was loved by everyone, just like his students. Which one of them didn't love him as half a son? However, none of them gave him a strange feeling like Siyu. It was as if he was trying to make up for something. His gaze unconsciously became scrutinizing. Siyu seemed to sense Uncle Gua's gaze. He looked up and gave Uncle Gua a friendly smile. Then, he lowered his head and continued to help Wenwen build the house. Uncle Gua sneered, looked away, and continued to take care of his orchid. If Fu Yun came out of the live broadcast, she would see such a warm and friendly scene. She thought about it and didn't want to disturb them. Instead, she went to Uncle Gua's side and helped him take care of the orchid. When Wan and Siyu worked together and finally built the wooden house, he clapped his hands happily and felt a sense of accomplishment. He turned to look at Siyu. Uncle Yu. Siyu responded and praised. Wenwen, you're awesome. Wenwen was so happy that he squinted his eyes and praised. Uncle Yu, you're awesome too. Wenwen wanted to share it with his mother. His gaze shifted, and he saw Fu Yun standing beside Uncle Gua. She was carefully tending to a blooming orchid in front of her, and Uncle Gua was guiding her from the side. Wenwen was about to shout when he suddenly stopped. He covered his mouth and rolled his black eyes. He didn't want to disturb his mother while she was working. Siyu also noticed that Fu Yun had come out of the live broadcast. He couldn't help but turn to look at the room in the flower shed. Fu Yun was doing the live broadcast inside. This meant that all the flowers she raised during the live broadcast were inside. Siyu became restless and wanted to take a look personally. He wanted to take a look at not only Little 11, but also the other orchids. However, he didn't get the owner's permission, so he could only suppress his thoughts for the time being. When Wenwen saw that Fu Yun was done with her work, he ran over and pounced on Fu Yun. Mom! Fu Yun Rua answered and turned around. Did you have fun? Wenwen nodded. Then, he pulled Fu Yun's hand and walked forward. The house is ready. Look! Fu Yun looked over and praised. Wenwen is really amazing. You built the house so beautifully. And Uncle Yu, Wenwen said happily. Yes, yes. Uncle Yu is also amazing, Fu Yun said casually. Her smiling eyes inadvertently looked over and happened to meet a pair of deep and charming eyes. Siyu stood casually. His posture was straight and his aura was extraordinary. There was a smile on his handsome face. Fu Yun was stunned. Suddenly, her cheeks were a little hot. She pursed her lips and smiled at Siyu. Then, she naturally looked away. Siyu walked over and asked familiarly, Can I go into the room over there to take a look? Fu Yun didn't hesitate and nodded in agreement. There was nothing that couldn't be seen in her live broadcast greenhouse. Usually, she didn't let Wenwen in because she didn't want him to suddenly barge into the live broadcast room. Now that the live broadcast had been turned off, he could naturally enter and leave. Fu Yun held Wenwen's hand and led Siyu to the greenhouse. There weren't only orchids in the greenhouse, but also live broadcast equipment. Siyu naturally recognized it. Fu Yun noticed that he glanced at it and explained, I usually do a live broadcast of growing flowers on the platform. She saw that Siyu only nodded and didn't ask further. Fu Yun heaved a sigh of relief. She believed that Siyu had heard about her identity being exposed previously. However, in front of a superstar who had more than 10 times more fans than her, she was embarrassed to introduce herself. Thinking about it, Siyu thought that she was just a small-time live streamer, so she skipped the topic. However, she never thought that a superstar would be one of her fans in the live broadcast room. Seeing that Siyu walked in front of the orchids and sized them up seriously, she said, These are the orchids that I grow. Although she also grew orchids outside, she only used the orchids in the greenhouse for her live broadcast. The first one that Siyu saw was his 11th, the Golden Emperor Bronze Sparrow. Although this species wasn't special among the orchids and was relatively common, it was the species that he had personally raised. In his heart, this was the most important species. His 11th was already budding and would fully bloom in a few days. Siyu didn't expect that he would be lucky enough to see his orchids bloom this year. Siyu thought to himself that he was probably the first person in the live broadcast room to see these orchids with his own eyes. Thinking of this, he was extremely happy. No one else had such an honor like him. This uniqueness made him forget himself for a moment. Siyu saw the watering device at the side and picked it up. Do you need me to water them? I can help. Don't. Fu Yun thought about how he and Wenwen were both killers in growing flowers. Her first reaction was to refuse. No need. Siyu looked over with a puzzled expression. Fu Yun walked over and took the watering device and placed it in a corner far away. Then, she smiled and explained to Siyu, I've already watered them all. If I water them again, I'll overdo it. Fu Yun thought to herself that Mr. Yu's physique was so special. What if the flowers and plants he watered died? She didn't dare to take the risk. These were all her painstaking efforts. If any of them were gone, she would cry to death. All right. Siyu looked at the orchids regretfully. He couldn't water his son himself. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He didn't know if he would have the chance tomorrow. When one was looking at the big lotus petal orchid with eyes full of amazement and love, he didn't know when he would be able to grow such beautiful flowers like his mother. Siyu and Wan had been lazing around in the greenhouse. It was unknown when they got together to look at the flowers together. They could even squat in front of a pot of flowers and whisper for a long time. Fuyan wanted to do something, but she didn't feel at ease leaving the two of them in her greenhouse. She was afraid that they would ruin her flowers if she made a mistake. Fortunately, it was soon noon. Fuyun used the excuse of making lunch to take Wan away and let Siyu come out with her. Fuyun brought the two of them back to the bungalow. She wiped her sweat and felt relieved. After lunch, Wan was sleepy and wanted to take an afternoon nap. After Fuyun coaxed the child to sleep, she also took a nap. Siyu left the flower garden after lunch. Fuyun thought that he had thought it through and returned to the village. She didn't expect that Siyu would come back at around 4 in the afternoon, and he was holding bags of things in his hands. Fuyun. Siyu didn't hide his aura as he carried the bags. He said to Fuyun, "This is a tent." Fuyun Ruo. Was he going to settle down here? Siyu walked around the bungalow. The living room couldn't fit the big tent, so he could only find a place outside. However, other than the ground in front of the door, there was no space to accommodate the tent. Fuyun had no choice but to help clear an area in front of the bungalow and set up the tent together. Perhaps it was because of Siyu's height and long legs. The tent was similar to a yurt. Siyu could enter by lowering his head slightly. He could even stand up straight inside. The space was very spacious and was about the same size as her small room. When one was very curious, he took off his shoes and ran into the tent. He walked back and forth and was curious for a long time. Fuyun also took a few more glances at the tent. It was her first time seeing such a yurt in real life. She didn't know where Siyu got it from. She didn't remember such a tent being sold in the small town. Siyu asked Wan, "Do you want to sleep with me tonight?" Wan hesitated. He was tempted, but then he nodded happily. He had never slept in such a house before. He would sleep with his mother tomorrow. Fuyun. Forget it. The little boy had grown up. She should prepare a room for Wan. When Uncle Gua came out of the flower garden, he saw the extra things in the empty space of the bungalow. It was obvious that they were going to stay in the flower garden for a long time. His face immediately darkened. Uncle Gua snorted and said in disdain, "Why are you still here?" He looked unhappy and pulled a long face. Siyu's expression was natural. It was obvious that he didn't care. He even chatted nicely with Uncle Gua. Siyu said seriously, "When one is worried about his mother's safety, he wants to hire me to protect her, so I can only come here." Uncle Gua's place was truly isolated from the rest of the world. He didn't go online and stayed in the flower garden all day long. He didn't interact much with other people and only had eyes for these precious orchids. Therefore, no one told him about the things that happened to Fuyun on the internet, so he didn't know about it. When he heard Siyu say that he was here to be a bodyguard, his first reaction was to ask, "What happened to Roro? If nothing happened, why would she need a bodyguard?" Siyu briefly told Uncle Gua about the things that happened on the internet. Uncle Gua frowned as he listened. What kind of nonsense was this? How could his student, who he treated like his daughter, be bullied like this? Other people didn't want to give this daughter to him. He wanted her to be part of his household register. After Uncle Gua calmed down, he looked at Siyu and was even more annoyed. "I don't have a place for you to stay here." Siyu said, "It's okay. I've already prepared it." He pointed to the luxurious tent not far away. Uncle Gua was speechless. Uncle Gua scolded, "I've never seen such a shameless rascal like you." Siyu raised his eyebrows. He didn't care at all. Sometimes, one didn't have to be thick-skinned. In the end, Siyu settled down in the flower bed and spent 2 peaceful days there. However, it was noisy outside. The production team had already stopped filming for 3 days. They had to decide if they wanted to continue filming. Although the guests were mainly filming the variety show during this period, They also had other activities. If they didn't continue filming, they would have to leave to catch up with other events. If the production team didn't give them a clear answer, the guests didn't dare to leave. What if they said that they wanted to continue filming the moment they left? The road to get here wasn't easy. Apart from having to transfer many buses, it also took a long time. Wouldn't it be torturous to go back and forth? The guests of the production team temporarily left the villagers' houses and gathered in the house rented by the production team. The staff who originally lived here had to stay in the town's hotel. Because the production team had a conflict with the villagers, they were not treated as well as before. Although they weren't chased out like Feng Shui, they were treated coldly. That kind of feeling didn't feel good, so they decided to return to the production team first. Xian Su was living well at the Mei family's house. He didn't want to squeeze with the guests of the production team, but they had all gone over. Xian Su couldn't leave them, so he could only reluctantly pack his bags and leave. As for Feng Shui, after she was chased out, she was taken away by Cheng Zhuyu. However, she didn't go too far. She temporarily stayed in the county's best hotel. Director Peng tried to contact Feng Shui several times, but Cheng Zhuyu tyrannically hung up on him before he could say anything. Director Peng wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Were they going to continue filming or not? They should have given a definite answer so that the production team could make a follow-up decision. He should have stood firm and rejected Feng Shui firmly when she wanted to come on the show. He shouldn't have been greedy about Siyu and Feng Shui's conflict. Although the traffic exploded, the production team was also destroyed. Don't ask him how he felt now. If you did, he would regret it very much. The assistant director asked Director Peng, "What did Siyu say?" Siyu's manager said that the show can continue, but Feng Shui can't be involved. Director Peng had a complicated look in his eyes. Judging from how protective Apple Entertainment was, he knew that Siyu had offended Feng Shui from Orange Entertainment and the Chong and Fu families. His manager, Yuan Xian, had come all the way here to help him. A busy man was staying in this remote and desolate place. He didn't care about anything else and only stayed here to keep an eye on Siyu. He was afraid that they would bully Siyu. Would the production team dare to bully a big star like Siyu? They couldn't afford to offend her. The assistant director slapped his thigh. "That's easy. If Feng Shui leaves the show, we can just find another guest." In any case, Feng Shui's image had been damaged. Although the storm was slowly subsiding, there would still be negative news. The assistant director didn't want a celebrity with negative news to appear on the show. Director Peng said faintly, "The problem now is if Feng Shui doesn't say anything." He called her manager, but she didn't pick up. He called Feng Shui, but she hung up. If they dared to announce that Feng Shui had left the show, wouldn't they offend Feng Shui and the Chong family? The assistant director was speechless. They couldn't afford to offend either side. It was too difficult for them. Siyu didn't care about the crisis the production team was facing. He was enjoying himself in the flower bed. When Yuan Xian came to look for him, Siyu was still unhappy and didn't want to be disturbed by the outside world. Siyu let Yuan Xian in and asked casually, "Why are you here?" Siyu's casual pants were rolled up to his knees, and he was holding a ladle in his hand. Yuan Xian watched as he walked over to the wet vegetable field and worked with Wan. When Wan saw Yuan Xian walk over, she shouted happily, "Uncle Yuan." Yuan Xian responded. He lowered his head and looked at the obviously overwatered vegetable field. The vegetables in the field were already wilting. He looked at the father and son who were happily watering the field and wanted to say, "Let these poor vegetables go." Chapter 47. When Yuan Xian saw the clear water flowing from the soil into the gully, he couldn't help but ask, "Is this enough water?" Wan raised his head. Under the delicate straw hat, a pair of sparkling eyes blinked. He said seriously, "The sun is so hot that the vegetables are all wilted. If you water them more, they won't be dried so quickly." "Just the right amount. That's enough." Yuan Xian wiped his sweat. In just a short while, he was already sweating profusely from the sun. "But the vegetables are wilting. Obviously, we haven't watered them enough." Wan widened his eyes and looked at Siyu. "Isn't that right, Uncle Yu?" Yuan Xian was speechless. Didn't it occur to him that the vegetables were wilting because they had been watered too much? Unexpectedly, Siyu nodded in agreement. Yes. After confirming with their eyes, they were father and son. Is this how you raise flowers? Yuan Xian asked. He felt that he understood why they would die if they raised flowers. How is that possible? Wenwen widened his eyes. Orchids are very delicate. They need specific amounts of moisture and nutrients in the soil. It's very difficult to raise them. Siyu added, I told you to raise flowers when you were free, but you always said that you weren't free. Asking such a naive question doesn't suit your elite temperament. Yuan Xian was speechless. Haha, so he should buy a few books on agriculture so that he could learn the correct way to grow vegetables? When Wenwen saw that he was almost done watering, he shouted for Siyu to stop. Only then did Siyu stop watering. The two of them came out of the vegetable field and rinsed the bucket and ladle clean before washing their feet. Wenwen loved the feeling of cool water washing her bottom. She couldn't help but step on the water. Then, she and Siyu stepped on each other. When Yuan Xian saw Siyu's childish behavior, he was so shocked that his eyes almost fell out of their sockets. It took him a long time to close his mouth. After having a child, would people become so childish? After Siyu and Wenwen were done playing, they returned to the living room. He noticed that Yuan Xian was looking at him strangely. Frowning, he asked, What's with that look? Yuan Xian said, I'm trying to see if you've been possessed. How could this person change so much in just a few days? Yuan Xian realized that he couldn't remember Siyu's arrogant attitude. Siyu, was there something wrong with his manager's brain? Yuan Xian chatted for a while before he got to the point. He briefly explained the program team's plan to Siyu. Wenwen cupped her chubby little face and listened to them attentively. Perhaps they thought that as a 3- or 4-year-old child, no matter how smart he was, he wouldn't be able to understand the conversation between adults, so they didn't avoid him. Yuan Xian took out a cattail leaf fan from somewhere and fanned himself. If it were up to me, I'd rather not film this program. Siyu was a capable actress. She had acting skills, looks, and willfulness. She didn't need to rely on variety shows to solidify her popularity. Yuan Xian's original intention of letting her take on this variety show was to relieve her boredom. Now that things had come to this, it didn't matter if she quit. Siyu didn't care about this. He didn't say anything about quitting because he wanted to use this as an excuse to stay. Before long, Fu Yun came over. When she saw Yuan Xian, she greeted him and asked about the program team. Yuan Xian didn't hide anything, so he roughly explained. When Fu Yun heard this, she worriedly confirmed. So it's very likely that this program won't be filmed anymore? Fu Yun felt rather guilty. She felt that it was her personal matter that had caused the program to end prematurely. She had caused the other guests on the program team to suffer an undeserved calamity. She wasn't familiar with the other guests, but she had interacted with Xian Su before. She had ruined their program, but Xian Su had never vented his anger on her. Siyu seemed to sense Fu Yun's guilt, so he said calmly, This matter has nothing to do with you. After all, you were implicated. On the contrary, it's because of my relationship with you. Apple Entertainment will provide appropriate resources to the guests as compensation. As he spoke, he glanced at Yuan Xian. Yuan Xian agreed. That's right. No matter what, this matter is related to Siyu. The company will provide appropriate compensation. When Fu Yun heard this, she felt a little better. She didn't have any resources in the entertainment industry, so she couldn't provide compensation. Now that Siyu's company had stepped forward, she was very grateful. However, she said, this has nothing to do with Mr. Yu. Siyu looked at her and said, It has nothing to do with you. You don't have to blame yourself. Even without you, this program wouldn't have been filmed. Fu Yun nodded hesitantly. Previously, the program team seemed to have an agreement with the local government to donate. Did this still count? Fu Yun thought to herself. If this charity was gone, how could she secretly donate money? There will be donations too, Siyu said with certainty. Even if the program team didn't donate, he would still donate. Siyu pondered. He liked the simple and honest people here. Furthermore, they had taken care of Fu Yun and her son a lot. The best way to repay them was to promote the economic development of this area. When Fu Yun heard this, she felt relieved. She calculated the assets in her hands and secretly wondered how much she could donate. Not long after, Siyu excused himself and left. Yuan Xian stayed behind to play with Wen. Fu Yun thought that since they weren't filming the program, so you might have to leave soon. Hence, she sent a message to Tian and urged her to hire a female bodyguard as soon as possible. When the bodyguard arrived, so you could leave and Wen wouldn't say anything. Yuan Xian looked at the vegetable field outside the house. Even though it had been exposed to the scorching sun for half a day, the soil was still wet. It was obvious that Siyu and Wen had watered it a lot. Fu Yun noticed that he was looking at her. Brother Yuan, what are you looking at? Yuan Xian pointed at the field. They are ruining the vegetable field. Aren't you going to scold them? Fu Yun nodded and said, it's okay. As long as they didn't harm the orchid field, they could do whatever they wanted. Siyu enthusiastically wanted to help her water, fertilize, and take care of the plants. Fu Yun rejected him with great difficulty. Later, she had an idea and asked him to help Wen water the vegetables. Fu Yun had actually taught Wen how to water the plants appropriately. However, children had their own logic. He felt that when people were thirsty, they would want to drink a lot of water. It was the same for the vegetables. If he watered them less, they would be dry by noon. Wouldn't he be thirsty in the afternoon? In her opinion, Wen wanted to play with the water. There weren't many places for children to play in. Furthermore, Wen had always been very sensible. Fu Yun couldn't bear to be too harsh on him, so she turned a blind eye. Fu Yun thought that Siyu would stop when he saw Wen. She didn't expect that he would play with Wen and do whatever she asked him to do. Yuan Xian. Behind every naughty child, there was a willful and pampering parent. This sentence was not wrong. Siyu went out for half a day and only came back in the evening. After Siyu came back, Yuan Xian left without asking them to stay for dinner. Fu Yun didn't ask him what he was going to do, but he took the initiative to ask, when are you going back to the village? Wen also looked over eagerly. Fu Yun hesitated for a moment. She felt that it was quite good to stay in the garden. However, Siyu and Wen both seemed to want to go back to the village. They didn't have anything to do here, so they were bored? Tomorrow? Fu Yun originally wanted to say 2 days later, but when the words reached her mouth, she changed her mind and said tomorrow. Wen clapped happily. That's great. He actually missed his underlings a little. Fu Yun couldn't help but laugh when she saw Wen so happy. Forget it. Anyway, the sun rose early. If she woke up early, it would only take 10 to 20 minutes to drive the electric scooter. She could rush back and forth. Fu Yun glanced at Siyu and thought that it was not safe to sleep in a tent all day. It was better to sleep in a room. With this decision, Fu Yun brought the adult and child back to the village the next evening. Siyu had already learned how to drive an electric scooter and asked Yuan Xian to push one back from town. The two of them drove the electric scooter back to the village. Fu Yun couldn't help but take a few more glances. When Siyu rode the electric scooter, the visual effect instantly became classy. The electric scooter stopped at the entrance of the courtyard. Wen immediately jumped down and ran to the door. Fu Yun went to open the door and then pushed the electric scooter. Wen, who couldn't wait to push the door open and run in, suddenly exclaimed. Fu Yun quickly pushed the door open and entered. What's the matter? She looked up and saw something extra under the tree at the side of the courtyard. It's a swing. Wen stood not far from the swing and looked at it. Then, he turned around and shouted excitedly to Fu Yun, Mom, it's a swing. Siyu then walked in and asked the mother and son, do you like it? Fu Yun turned around and asked in surprise, it's you? Siyu revealed a faint smile and nodded. I made it myself. Ever since he found out that Wen liked to play on the swing, Siyu instructed his subordinates to find the materials to make the swing. He spent almost an entire day making it himself just to give them a surprise. However, due to the conditions, the size of the swing was relatively small. Fu Yun didn't expect Siyu to be so thoughtful. She was really pleasantly surprised. She said gratefully, thank you. Wen likes it very much. She looked at Wen's cheerful little back view and her eyes were as gentle as water. What about you? Siyu asked. Me? Fu Yun was stunned. Then, she revealed a smile. I like it very much too. Siyu's expression was gentle. It's good that you like it. Wen had already run to the swing. He stood on his tiptoes and clung onto the board of the swing. The swing swayed slightly because of Wen's clinging movements. His chubby little body was lying on top of the swing. His two short little legs were almost off the ground as he swung them a few times. The swing was too high for Wen. He climbed for a long time, but still couldn't sit properly. Fu Yun and Siyu parked the car and walked over. Siyu took a step with his long legs and carried Wen to sit properly on the swing. Wen finally sat properly. He struggled to hold on to the thick rope on both sides of the swing. The length of the swing was a little long for Wen. He tried his best to straighten his two hands, but he could only barely touch it. Fu Yun stood not far away and noticed a thick layer of fine sand under the swing. Siyu was very meticulous. He had even predicted that the child would fall from the swing. With this layer of sand as a buffer, there was a high probability that the child would not be hurt. Ruoruo, come here. Siyu waved at Fu Yun. Me? Fu Yun walked over with a puzzled expression. Siyu smiled. Sit. Wen happily invited her. Mom, let's play on the swing together. I'll play too. Fu Yun saw Wen's little chubby hands holding the thick rope. She could only hold it to one side. She was worried that Wen would lose his grip on the swing and fall, so she sat down. She thought that Mr. Yu was very thoughtful. He was worried that it would not be safe for such a young Wen to play on the swing alone. He specially found a longer swing so that the adults could accompany him. Siyu went behind them. Are you ready? Fu Yun held the rope with both hands. One of her hands covered Wen's hand. She asked Wen, are you holding on tight? Wen's other hand grabbed Fu Yun's clothes behind her back and said loudly, hold on tight. Siyu pushed them up. At first, he did not push hard and the angle of the swing was not big. Slowly, the angle of the swing became bigger and bigger. Wen soon laughed out loud. Fu Yun could not help but laugh. She had not played on the swing for many years. It was quite interesting. The two of them played for a while before Fu Yun shouted to stop. She then changed people. Mr. Yu, come sit too. I'll push. No need. Siyu refused. He made this swing for the mother and son to play. He would not play such a childish game. Fu Yun looked at the time. I should go make dinner. She could not continue playing with Wen. Wen had not played enough and was still sitting on the swing. When she heard this, she looked at Siyu. Siyu immediately changed his words. Then I'll play with Wen. Fu Yun saw Siyu sit down and put her long legs on the ground. After the swing swayed, Wen instantly smiled and went back to the kitchen to cook. Because of the addition of the swing, the old house became a new playground for the children. They had never played on a swing before except for seeing it in school. When they saw that Wen's house had an additional playground, they were extremely envious. Did your mother make it for you? A child asked. Wen proudly stuck out her belly. It was made by Uncle Yu. Wow. Yi blinked and suddenly asked in a childish voice, does Uncle Yu want to be your stepfather? I heard from Grandma that you're going to have a stepfather. Will your stepfather beat you, scold you, and not give you food? Zhuang was extremely worried. It was as if he could imagine Wen's miserable days without food. His eyes suddenly moistened, and he wanted to cry. Wen. He waved his hand. Of course not. Uncle Yu likes me, and specially gave me this gift. Although his mother was perfect in his eyes, Uncle Yu and his mother were not from the same world. How could they be together? It was impossible. When the children saw that Wen was so certain, they nodded as if they understood. Then, they lined up to play on the swing. The children in and out of the village came in the morning and at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. They played until sunset before going home. As there was only one swing, each child could only line up to play. Moreover, there was a limit to the time they could play. So the children were not satisfied and reported on time in the morning and afternoon. Brother, I want to play again tomorrow. Xiao Shan sniffed and said to his brother, Dashan, got it. Let's go again tomorrow. Okay. Xiao Shan nodded happily. Dashan also brought the children from their village to line up to play on the swing. They went home in groups at sunset. The children chased and played by the roadside. Suddenly, 2 black cars drove slowly on the country road. They approached them, then passed them, and continued to drive forward. Dashan and the others saw the cars and stood by the roadside to take a look. The cars seemed to be going to the village. Their village rarely saw cars from outside the village all year round. It was only recently that outsiders came in and out of the village frequently, so they were a little surprised. Not long after the black cars passed, a van stopped not far in front of them. After a while, a few young men carrying machines got out of the van. "Are we close?" "We're almost there." The young men looked around. The car they had been following was nowhere to be seen. Their car could not get any closer. It was too noisy and they could not be found. The navigation system showed that they were only 800 meters away from their destination. They just had to walk there quietly. "Pay attention to the camera later. When we get the first-hand information, we'll be rich. This place is really remote," a young man said. He almost could not help but rub his buttocks. After sitting in the car for so long, he felt that his buttocks were not his anymore. "Let's hurry. We won't be able to make it in time." The short man was unconsciously excited. When they got the hottest insider news of a rich family, they would definitely become famous in the industry. Xiao Gang had already noticed that a group of village children were looking at them without blinking. Their companions were still using their phones to search for navigation. Xiao Gang thought for a while and walked toward the group of children. He smiled kindly at them. "Children, may I ask if Fu Yunruo's house in Shangha village is this way?" Dashin and the others looked at the stranger warily and did not speak. Xiao Gang fumbled in his pocket for a while and took out a lollipop. "This lollipop belongs to whoever shows me the way." The children did not speak. They were even more alert. Dashin suddenly carried his brother and shouted to the group of children, "Run!" The group of children turned and ran toward Shangha village. Dashin ran at the back and looked back at them from time to time. After a while, the group of children disappeared. Xiao Gang was confused. He looked very kind. Why did the children run away in fear? Did the navigation system arrive? Yes, it's here. Shangha village is just ahead. It did not show the location of Fu Yun's house. We'll ask when we enter the village. The two cars had caused such a big commotion. Many people must have heard it. Let's go. The three young men carried their equipment and rushed forward. On the other side, Dashin and the group of children ran back to Shangha village. Before they entered the village, Dashin shouted, "Bad people are coming." Chapter 48. The children's shrill voices rang out one after another in the village. The adults who were on their way home from the fields heard the commotion and ran over with their hoes. "Where are the bad guys? Are they human traffickers? Where are they? Where are they?" Regardless of whether they were working inside or outside, they locked the children in their homes, picked up the nearest weapon, and ran out to look for the children who were shouting about the bad guys. Dashin called the adults over and shouted, "There are bad guys who want to catch Sister Ruo." "Oh no." A middle-aged woman suddenly slapped her thigh. "I saw two cars enter the village. I thought they were from the production crew, so I didn't think much of it." The cars were similar to the ones that had passed by the village. They were all black and shiny, so she thought they were going to look for the village chief. Seeing the children shouting about the bad guys, they were worried. They couldn't let their family members be bullied in their own territory, so they hurried to Fu Yunruo's house. The two cars stopped by the roadside. The front door opened first, and a tall man with long legs got out. After closing the door, he walked around the back of the car to open the other side. A woman in a plain dress got out of the car and stood beside the man. She looked up at him and their eyes met, full of affection. "Brother Chong, let's go over." The woman broke the sweet atmosphere. "Okay." The man reached out and held her hand. He promised, "Shuer, don't worry. I won't let you suffer." This couple was Feng Shueruo and Chang Zhuyu. They had stayed in the county for a few days, but before they left, Feng Shueruo's mother, Feng Wanning, and stepfather, Fu Zonghong, came to visit them. Then, under the request of the two elders, they stepped into the village again. Feng Shueruo leaned over slightly and said to the quiet car window, "Mom, Uncle, we're here." The car window rolled down, revealing a well-maintained and elegant face of Wenwan. He resembled Feng Shui a little. Feng Wanning turned her head and said gently to Fu Zonghong, who was frowning, "Let's get out of the car too." Fu Zonghong did not say anything. "We've already taken 99 steps. One more step won't make a difference. Old Fu, there's no overnight feud between father and daughter. Talk it out. Yun Ruo will understand." Fu Zonghong looked irritated. He did not want to make this trip at first, but under the persuasion of Mother Fong and Shui Ruo, he decided to come personally. However, he felt that he had lowered his head in front of Yun Ruo. Since he was here, shouldn't he come out to meet him? After some persuasion, Fu Zonghong got out of the car with a straight face. Fong Shui pointed at a farmhouse in front of them. My sister used to live there. When Fu Zonghong saw the courtyard, his brows furrowed even more tightly. For the past few years, she would rather live in such a dilapidated house than go home. Fong Wanting looked at her and felt sorry for her. This child, why is she so stubborn? Old Fu, let's take her home. It's up to her, Fu Zonghong said angrily. However, under the persuasion of Fong Wanting, he walked forward unwillingly. Fong Shui hesitated. Chang Zhuyu immediately asked with concern, Shui, what's wrong? The two elders who were walking in front of them stopped and turned around to look at them. Fong Shui forced a smile. Uncle, my sister might not be happy to see me. Why don't I wait here? Fong Shui did not want to make this trip, but she hoped that her uncle and sister could resolve the misunderstanding as soon as possible, so she came to lead the way. Chang Zhuyu immediately felt sorry for her. You didn't do anything wrong. Why do you have to avoid her? You're giving her face by coming here. Fong Wanting hesitated for a moment. She looked at Fu Zonghong and said softly, Old Fu, these two children have been fighting recently. Why don't we let them meet after we resolve the misunderstanding? Fu Zonghong immediately raised his eyebrows. As an older sister, she's so narrow-minded and doesn't have any tolerance for others. She only knows how to bully her younger sister. What else can I expect from her? Shui Ruo, don't worry. With me around, she won't dare to bully you. Fu Zonghong walked over angrily. Uncle. Fong Shui anxiously walked forward. Chang Zhuyu quickly held her. Shui, slow down. Don't fall. However, before Fu Zonghong could open the door, he was stopped by a shout. Who are you? Siyu was helping Fu Yun in the kitchen. When Wan was circling around Fu Yun, Fu Yun loved to think about food when she had time. With another person in the house, she was in the mood to cook a feast. When Wan was a carnivore, and Siyu was no different. When Wan was a greedy little kitten, she suddenly pestered Fu Yun to eat braised meat. She was in a rush and didn't manage to buy any meat. How could she make it? She quickly went to Aunt May's house and caught a duck that she had asked Aunt May to help her raise. She slaughtered it and made a braised duck. It was also fragrant. Wen didn't mind at all. After the duck was braised, the aroma overflowed. Wen wasn't in the mood to play. She was eagerly waiting to eat. Siyu was tending to the fire when his phone vibrated. He took it out and glanced at it before putting it aside. Fu Yun noticed and asked, Mr. Yu, is something the matter? Siyu said, Nothing. If Mr. Yu has something to do, you don't have to worry about Wen. He will understand, Fu Yun said. She saw that Siyu's phone had been ringing a few times. If he had something to do, he should go and do it. Wen wouldn't be unreasonable. It's really nothing. My friend's family has a dog. He is so excited that he keeps sending photos to share. Just ignore him. Fu Yun heard this and said, Then your friend must love dogs. Yes. After all, we are all single dogs. We have a lot to talk about. Fu Yun was speechless. She glanced at Siyu and thought to herself, Is this a bad friend? Siyu stared at Wen for a long time. When the little guy had enough, he sat on the stool and his little head moved and swayed around with Fu Yun. From his angle, he could see the curve of the baby fat on her little face. Siyu thought for a while and said, Speaking of which, I haven't received my payment yet. Wen was speechless. Wen looked over warily and subconsciously covered his face. Siyu raised his eyebrows and said, Why? Are you not going to fulfill the agreement? Wen's eyes drifted and then he said self-righteously, You forgot. He didn't forget. At most, he didn't remind him. Wen was prepared to be pinched on his face every day. However, there were no signs of pinching on his face on the first and second day. He was secretly happy and thought that Uncle Yu had forgotten. In the end, he remembered. Let bygones be bygones. Don't bring up old scores. Wen tried to act cute to get away with it. Siyu looked at him and smiled. There is no time limit on the payment in the agreement. I have saved up a few days. It felt good to pinch so much at once. When one was speechless, he felt his face ache. Come, let me pinch. See, you gestured for one to come over. When one asked Fu Yunrua for help. Mom, Fu Yunrua held back her laughter and said seriously, When you have to do what you promised. If you break the agreement, then the agreement is invalid and Uncle you doesn't have to be your bodyguard anymore. When one was speechless. All right, he couldn't break the agreement. When one took the initiative to move his face closer and said, Go ahead. When one closed his eyes and his long eyelashes fluttered, he opened his eyes slightly and said, Be gentle. See, you smiled and agreed. He went to wash his hands before sitting at the side and reaching out to pinch. Although he said he was pinching, he was actually using his fingers to scratch. It had to be said that this soft and smooth bouncy feeling was really good. Fu Yunrua laughed silently at the side and held her stomach. While they were fooling around, they suddenly heard a commotion outside. Fu Yunrua walked out to see what was going on. It was so noisy. Outside the courtyard, a group of villagers with weapons in their hands stopped Fu Yunrua's group at the door. The person who asked the question was Aunt May. She scrutinized the group of people. What are you doing in Shanghe village? Fong Wanting saw the villagers' stance and frowned slightly. Then, when Wan said, Hello, villagers. We are Yunrua's family. Chapter 49. Thank you for taking care of Ruarua all these years. Fong Wanting's voice was filled with gratitude. The villagers still did not let down their guard. Ruarua's background had been circulating on the internet, and the villagers already knew everything. They even imagined Ruarua to be a pitiful little girl. Having a stepmother meant having a stepfather. Wasn't she a pitiful little girl? Oh, Aunt May said softly. Her sharp gaze scrutinized the beautiful woman. You're Ruarua's black-hearted stepmother. Fong Wanting looked helpless. People's hearts were biased. They had been with Yunrua for a long time and were closer to her. They understood how they felt about protecting Yunrua. Since ancient times, it had always been difficult to be a stepmother. No matter how she tried to explain, she would only be seen as quibbling. Fu Zonghong glared at the old woman in dissatisfaction. How can you say that? Fu Zonghong had been in a high position for many years. He had an imposing aura that made people tremble. Did that unfilial daughter go around bad-mouthing her stepmother? And who are you? I'm her father. Aunt May placed her hands on her hips and said loudly, Our Ruarua is gentle and beautiful. She never badmouths people behind their backs. She has never said anything bad about you in front of us. Just based on your current attitude, I know how much Ruarua has suffered here. Fong Wanting patted Fu Zonghong's hand, indicating that he should not be calculative. Even if Fu Zonghong pointed at her nose and scolded her, she still kept a low profile. As her elders, we are also at fault. We didn't communicate well with our child and caused her to run away from home for more than 4 years. It's our fault. No matter what, Yunrua is Elder Fu's daughter. I hope that the villagers can let us see her and have a good talk. For the past 4 years, seeing how Elder Fu has been so worried about our child, I also feel bad. Fong Wanting said sincerely, As long as she can understand her father, I will apologize to Yunrua properly. Aunt May scoffed. You speak as if you have been wronged. Who is the one suffering here? What do you mean by running away from home? Aren't you the ones who forced her to leave? If she doesn't leave, she will lose her life. Fong Wanting frowned. We didn't know that Yunrua had such a misunderstanding about us, but this is a society ruled by law. Who dares to harm other people's lives? This is a crime punishable by imprisonment. A middle-aged man hesitated and said to Aunt May, Sister-in-law, is there some kind of misunderstanding? Ruarua's stepmother didn't look like someone who would torture her stepdaughter. Hey, did you forget what happened to Yinko 7 years ago? After being reminded by the villagers, everyone remembered. Ingzi had also been tortured by her stepmother for many years. In the beginning, she treated her stepdaughter very well in front of outsiders. The neighbors were also deceived. Later, when the matter was exposed, they were all shocked. That stepmother also looked gentle and kind in front of outsiders. Later, she found out that Ingzi was poked with needles by her stepmother every day. Behind closed doors, she was either beaten or scolded. She did all the work. However, When the truth was revealed, Ingzi had already jumped into the river. She couldn't be saved. After an autopsy, she was found to have needle holes all over her body. The police said that she had been abused for many years. That stepmother's image was too good to outsiders. They didn't expect her to torture her stepdaughter like that. Occasionally, the neighbors would wonder why a child in her teens was so thin and small. To outsiders, she said that the child was picky about food and wanted to lose weight. Her relatives and neighbors also saw that her stepmother was kind enough to give her chicken drumsticks and meat. However, she didn't eat them and only ate vegetables. Because of this, they felt that Ingzi was immature and kindly told her not to go on a diet. It wasn't until she died, and the police came to investigate that this evil behavior was exposed. Didn't Rua have the same experience as Ingzi? They didn't know if Rua had been abused, but this stepmother's face was very similar. Moreover, Rua's father didn't look like he was here to look for his daughter. Instead, he looked like he was here to seek revenge. In an instant, everyone's hostility towards Fong Wanting's group grew. Fu Zonghong's expression was impatient. These villagers were too unruly and unreasonable. However, they had the numbers advantage. Fu Zonghong didn't bring many bodyguards with him. He could only be passive. If Fu Yun came out at this time, she opened the courtyard door and suddenly saw a large group of people outside. Her heart skipped a beat. What's wrong? She looked around and then saw a group of people surrounded by people. It was a very conspicuous group of people. Fu Yun was in a daze for a moment before she remembered this face. Wasn't this the original owner's father? Fu Yun was surprised. However, when she saw the few people standing beside her father, she didn't feel surprised. Fu Zonghong saw the woman who walked out of the courtyard door. When he saw that face, he was in a daze. At that moment, it was as if the scene had reappeared. He saw Sang Qing walking towards him. Sang Qing was his first wife. They were in love. When they were young, they were also passionately in love. They entered the palace with longing for the future. Unfortunately, later on Fong Wanting saw Fu Yun Rua and went forward in surprise. Are you Yun Rua? It's really you. I've finally found you. You unfilial daughter. You've left home for so many years. Are you looking down on me? Fu Zonghong shouted a few words. He was already prepared to quarrel with Fu Yun Rua until his face turned red. However, Fu Yun Rua, who used to quarrel with him every time, just looked at him calmly. Her eyes were clear and cold. Fu Zonghong's mind went blank for a moment. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. Fu Yun Rua looked indifferent. What are you doing here? Fong Wanting said helplessly, Yun Rua, no matter how angry you are with me, you can't joke about yourself. After you left home for so many years, your father thought about you day and night. Is that so? Fu Yun Rua raised her eyebrows. I thought that without me being an eyesore, your family of 3 would be living a happy life. What are you talking about? Fu Zonghong shouted. Fong Wanting smiled bitterly. There's no overnight feud between father and daughter. If there's any misunderstanding, let's talk about it. There's no misunderstanding. Fu Yun Rua smiled. If you really care about me so much, you should have come to look for me in the 4 years that I've been away. Parents who care about their children will be very anxious if they can't contact their children for 3 to 4 hours. If they can't contact their children for 24 hours, they will call the police. What about you? I've been away for more than 4 years, but you didn't come to look for me. Huh? She felt that it was ironic that he thought about her day and night. He probably treated her as if she didn't exist, right? Although Fu Yun Rua deliberately hid, if this father really cared about her, he should have at least called the police when he couldn't find her, right? At that time, she scrolled through the news every day. Chairman Fu still went to work as usual. The entire Fu Corporation was peaceful, as if nothing had happened. No one looked for her, and at that time, her tense nerves did relax. But sometimes, when she thought about it, she felt that it was unfair for the original body. Fu Zonghong was so angry that he was trembling. You're the one who ran away from home, and you still think you're in the right? I'm just too good to you, so you don't know the hardships of the world. Without the Fu family, look at how you're living. Fu Yun Rua felt sad for the original body. This was her father. He lost contact with a weak woman, but he wasn't worried about the danger she might encounter. Instead, he felt that he could let her experience the hardships of life. Looking at it this way, the situation she was worried about when she first came here might be true. He didn't care about his biological daughter for so many years, so it wasn't strange that he would chase his daughter out of the house. No wonder the original body's personality was getting more and more extreme, and even her biological father was so cruel. I'm fine now. She couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with them. The more she talked, the worse she felt. What exactly do you want to do by lowering yourself to come here? Fong Wanting looked worried. Yun Ruo, we're here to take you home. You've been angry for so long, so it's time for you to calm down, right? Fu Yun Ruo said, that's not my home, so why should I go back? Aren't I just looking for trouble? Sister, uncle, really wants you to come home. Fong Shui Ruo said in a low voice, looking a little timid. I can go back if you want, as long as these two eyesores don't appear in front of me. I don't like them. Oh, if you can't bear to part with them, you can go with them. Fu Yun Ruo said indifferently. What kind of attitude is that? Fu Zhonghong was so angry that his face turned red. This is your mother and sister. Fu Yun Ruo looked up. My mother has been buried for many years. Is this woman my mother's reincarnated body? She even gave birth to a sister for me? Mr. Fu, what are you saying about my mother? No wonder people are saying that this Mrs. Fong is your first wife, and that Miss Fong Shui Ruo is your only biological daughter. So it was your idea? Aren't you afraid that my mother will climb out of the ground and look for you? What nonsense are you talking about? Fong Wanting felt a chill run down her spine. She forced a smile and said, Yun Ruo, I don't mean to replace my sister. It's all a misunderstanding. Then it's true. Mr. Fu, what about you? Did you know? Fu Zhonghong was in a daze. It seemed like someone had said that before. How did he respond at that time? He probably didn't care. Do I have to explain myself over such a small matter? In Fu Zhonghong's opinion, this small misunderstanding didn't affect anything. The truth was the truth. Wen Wen's face was pinched for a long time. His small body exuded an aura of hopelessness. He didn't feel any pain, but his white and tender cheeks flushed as the slightly calloused fingertips gently caressed his face. Wen Wen sighed like a little adult. He had sacrificed a lot, but it was all meaningful. Noticing that his mother had gone out for a long time and hadn't returned, Wen Wen couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and was about to run out. However, Siyu grabbed him by the back of his collar in time. Wen Wen's short legs were still running in place. He turned his head and looked. Uncle Yu, I want to go out. Don't run around. I'm not running around. I'm going to the courtyard. Wen Wen said anxiously, I'll be back soon. Uncle, look after the meat. Don't burn it. Siyu pulled out the half-burnt firewood and left only a small flame. Then, he led Wen Wen out. When they reached the courtyard, they didn't walk out. Instead, they stood behind the door and listened to the group of people talking outside. When Wen Wen heard that so many people were surrounding his mother, he couldn't take it anymore. He quickly broke free from Siyu's hand and ran out to stand in front of Fu Yun Ruo. He opened his arms wide and glared at the group of people in front of him. Don't bully my mother. Fu Zhonghong looked at the child who looked exactly like Fu Yun Ruo. Whose child is this? Fu Zhonghong was so angry that his face turned red. His whole body was trembling and he felt dizzy. Fong Wanting stepped forward and held his hand while trying to calm him down. Who is that wild man? Fu Zhonghong was furious. When Fu Yun Ruo saw Wen Wen running out, she couldn't be bothered to scold him. She quickly pulled him over and let him hide behind her. After that, Siyu also walked out. Fu Zhonghong flew into a rage. It's this man. Siyu looked at the group of people and smiled. It's none of your business, Fu Yun Ruo said coldly. If there's nothing else, then take care. I won't send you off. It's not convenient to keep guests at home. Fu Yun Ruo didn't want this matter to be mentioned again and again. She also didn't want her son's background to be discussed. When she turned to the villagers, Fu Yun Ruo's expression was gentle. Thank you all for today. It's okay. It's what I should do. Don't worry. If anyone dares to bully you in our village, I'll teach them how to behave. Fu Yun Ruo thanked the villagers and led Wen Wen into the house. Fu Zhonghong shouted angrily, Stop right there. He went forward to stop Fu Yunruo, but was blocked by Siyu. Chairman Fu, please have some self-respect. Sister. Feng Shuirua bit her lip and raised her voice slightly as she shouted at Fu Yunruo's back. If my leaving makes you happy, I'll leave. Fu Yunruo pretended not to hear and didn't give any reaction. Siyu waited for the mother and son to enter the house before she went in and closed the door. Feng Shuirua lowered her eyes sadly. Chang Zhuyu hugged Feng Shuirua and shouted at the courtyard. Fu Yunruo, you evil woman, don't be so ungrateful. The villagers were just watching the situation unfold, but when they saw their attitude, they couldn't stand it anymore. What's wrong? There's strength in numbers. So many of you ganged up to bully a weak woman. I think you don't care about us at all. Is this the younger sister who stole her stepsister's husband? She's a celebrity. How shameless. He's not her husband yet. I heard that he's her fiancé. People in the city love to use such titles. If she were here, she would have been drowned in everyone's saliva. How could she still have the face to stay here? The father is so biased. His stepdaughter stole his biological daughter's husband, but he's still on his stepdaughter's side and scolded his biological daughter. Indeed, with a stepmother comes a stepfather. This pillow talk is really powerful. This woman is really scheming. I couldn't tell. The villagers booed. That's not all. The first wife's daughter and the first wife's deceased wife have been squeezed out of this family. This is the first time I've heard of this. Yes. The villagers didn't bother to hide their loud voices. Everyone present heard them clearly. Chang Zhuyu saw that Feng Shuirua's face was red and her eyes were filled with tears. He immediately said hatefully, "What do you bunch of unruly people know?" Aunt May said disdainfully, "We don't know any great principles, but at least we know what etiquette, honor, and shame are." That's right. She still claims to be a well-educated tycoon. She doesn't even have morals. Like daughter, like mother. If her daughter is such a trash, her mother must not be a good person either. This man is also a piece of trash. Poor Ruoro. How could she be so unlucky to meet such despicable people? If I were her biological mother, I wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Fu Zonghong and the others' faces were contorted. They wanted to defend themselves, but the villagers didn't listen to them. They only cared about talking loudly. In the end, Fu Zonghong left with an ashen face. Old Fu. Feng Shui wanted to chase after him worriedly. Only after the group of people left did the villagers disperse. Not far away, 3 young men were lying in a corner. They were trembling with excitement as they watched the camera footage. Breaking news. Siyu was there too. They were going to be famous. Chapter 50. Fu Zonghong returned to his car and waited for Feng Wanting to get in before instructing the chauffeur to leave. Feng Wanting did not look too happy either, but she still comforted him gently. Old Fu, don't be angry. We will come again tomorrow. We sincerely invite Yunruo back. We haven't found her for so many years. It's normal for her to be angry. It's also my fault. I should have insisted on finding her. Feng Wanting sighed. What does it have to do with you? If the news of the Fu family's daughter running away from home gets out, won't we become a joke in our circle? Fu Zonghong said subconsciously. He frowned. She did something wrong and is too ashamed to face others. I still want to save my face. Old Fu. Feng Wanting shouted in disagreement. Then she said helplessly, in the end, Shuirua is also in the wrong. No matter what, she should not have agreed to Ayu's pursuit. After all, she was engaged to Yunruo. The world did not look at the process. They only knew the outcome. The person who was engaged to the elder sister ended up with the younger sister. What's wrong with the 2 children loving each other? When the 2 families were engaged, they were still young. If I knew this would happen, I would not have arranged their marriage. Feng Wanting said softly. After all, Yunruo likes Ayu too. Obviously, she felt helpless that the 2 sisters liked the same man. Now the internet is saying that Shuirua came between the elder sister and her future brother-in-law. Sigh. Feng Wanting sighed softly. Fu Zonghong frowned and said directly, the news on the internet cannot be trusted. Once people open their mouths, there will be all kinds of nonsense. I will get someone to suppress it. Fu Zonghong spent most of his time and energy on work. He did not read the entertainment news on the internet. He only watched financial channels and financial magazines. Fu Zonghong's chest was full of anger. He leaned against the back of the seat and closed his eyes to rest. Fong Wanning saw this and considerately did not disturb him. She turned her head to look at the car window. The scenery outside the window flashed by, and it was reflected in her eyes like a flash of light. Fu Zonghong closed his eyes and slowly calmed down. However, a pair of cold eyes kept appearing in his mind. They had lived together for more than 10 years in the past. Whenever they met, they would quarrel with each other. When she was still underage, she started to put on heavy makeup and had a bad temper. She turned the house upside down. It was only now that he realized that his daughter looked so much like Sang Qing. The memories buried in the depths of his mind surfaced at this moment. It had been a long time since he thought of Sang Qing. Siyu closed the door and shut out all the noise outside. Fu Yun instantly felt that her ears were much quieter. Wenwen hugged Fu Yun Ruo with concern in his eyes. He said in a childish voice, "Mommy, don't be sad. Baby loves Mommy the most." Fu Yun Ruo listened to the little darling's cute, comforting words, and the gloominess in her heart disappeared. She squatted down and hugged the warm and soft little Sunday. Mommy is not sad because Mommy has Wenwen, this big darling. Mommy loves Wenwen the most. Wenwen's little mouth could not help but curl up. Yes, he would not admit that those who hurt his mother were his relatives. Wenwen already knew that the person outside just now was his biological grandfather. But so what? The only person he accepted was Fu Yun Ruo. Fu Yun Ruo also had the same thoughts. Wenwen was her only relative. If Father Fu treated the original owner of her body well, she would fulfill her responsibility as a child. However, Fu Zonghong really could not bear to be a father. She could not treat him as an elder. Wenwen loves Mommy the most too. Fu Yun Ruo rubbed his tender and smooth cheeks. She was extremely grateful to herself for making the right decision. If it was not for Wenwen, she did not know how she would be living in this world where she had no one to rely on. Wenwen took the initiative to rub against her and even kissed her face. His heart ached for his mother. He had more or less guessed what had happened in the past. In the future, with him around, he would definitely not let them bully his mother again. Siyu looked at the mother and son pair being affectionate and stood at the side without saying a word. Suddenly, Fu Yun Ruo thought of something. Ah, my beer duck. Could it be that it was burnt? Fu Yun Ruo hurriedly ran into the kitchen. Wenwen Ruo ran with his short legs. His fragrant meat. She opened the lid of the pot and a rich fragrance wafted out. Fu Yun Ruo used a spatula to stir-fry it. She was collecting the sauce now. Fortunately, it was not burnt. Wenwen Ruo smelled the fragrance and salivated. Mommy, is it done? Is it done? Wenwen Ruo tried his best to stand on tiptoe. With his height, he could not see the surface of the stove, let alone the meat in the pot. Mommy, I can try it. Wenwen Ruo blinked his big eyes. His small mouth unconsciously opened wide, as if he was waiting to be fed. Wait a little longer. It will be more delicious if it stews for a while. Fu Yun Ruo looked at the stove. There was only a vigorous spark left. She only added a thin piece of firewood and extinguished the fire to simmer it slowly. Wenwen Ruo was extremely disappointed. Sigh, he wanted to eat fragrant meat. Fu Yun Ruo looked at Siyu Ruo. Mr. Yu, can I ask you for a favor? Siyu looked over and gestured for her to speak. Can you invite Uncle May and Aunt May over? Although he had already told Aunt May before, if he did not invite them, they would definitely not come over. Siyu Ruo agreed and then left the kitchen. The duck meat was stewed for a while. When Fu Yun Ruo saw that the sauce was almost done, she put it on a plate. Mom, Mom. Wenwen jumped up and down at the side. Wait a little longer. Fu Yun took out Wenwen's small bowl. I want duck feet. I want duck neck. Eat a piece first. Fu Yun placed a duck's foot in his small bowl. Let me say this first. You can only eat 3 pieces of meat tonight. This is the first piece of meat. Although there were no spices, the beer duck was still considered to have a strong taste. If Fu Yun strictly limited his appetite, he would not be able to eat it. Wenwen nodded. He loved to eat the fragrant meat, but he still had to listen to his mother. Moreover, as long as he had something to eat, it was fine. He couldn't eat too much at one time, but he could eat more. Fu Yun made a light vegetable soup. At the same time, she steamed an egg custard for Wan in a small pot. This was his main dish. Not long after, Siyu returned with Uncle May and Aunt May. Grandpa May, Grandma May. Wan hugged his small bowl and gnawed on the duck's foot with relish. When he saw the three adults raise his head and call for them, there was some sauce on his fair and tender cheeks. Aunt May immediately smiled and said a few words to Wan before entering the kitchen. Siyu saw Wan like this. His fair and tender little claws were grabbing the duck's foot and eating until there was sauce around his mouth. He went to the living room and took a few pieces of tissue paper to wipe his mouth. Wan consciously raised his head and let Siyu help wipe his mouth. After that, he continued eating. Siyu looked at the juicy little mouth that had just been cleaned. When Wan was still unsatisfied, Siyu brought him to wash his hands and face. This time, it was clean. Wan ran over to act coquettishly with Fu Yun. Uncle May and Aunt May watched with a smile. At this moment, the sky outside had already darkened. When the lights were turned on, they seemed to be coated with a layer of warm light. When Siyu saw this scene, a corner of his heart softened. This was the so-called atmosphere of the human world. Uncle May and Aunt May saw that Fu Yun did not take the previous incident to heart and acted as usual. They did not mention it at all, so the atmosphere was harmonious for the entire night. Aunt May and Fu Yun were cleaning up in the kitchen. Siyu and Wan were playing in the courtyard. Uncle May sat under the roof and watched. Aunt May said, "I've asked around about the kindergarten for you. Wait until September and you can register directly. When the time comes, your uncle will accompany you. There are only 2 kindergartens in town. The children in our village are sent to Little Angel Kindergarten. We will also be sent there." "Okay, thank you." Fu Yun hesitated and did not say what he wanted to say. After Uncle May left, the 4 of them finished washing up. It was already 10 o'clock. Aunt May had already returned to her room to sleep. At this moment, only Fu Yun, her son, and Siyu were in the living room. Fu Yun looked at Wan, who was nestled in Siyu's arms and muttering, and said, "Wan, it's time to sleep." Wan reached out to Fu Yun. "Hug." Fu Yun walked over and leaned over slightly to carry Wan. The fragrance of the same shower gel was faintly discernible. For some reason, Siyu felt that this woman's body smelled better. "Mr. Yu, good night." Wan hugged Fu Yun's neck and turned to look at Siyu. "Uncle Yu, good night." Siyu said, "Good night." Only Siyu was left in the living room. He sat for a while before returning to his room. Siyu took out his cell phone and tapped on the screen to open a series of unread messages. Yuan Xian had sent over dozens of messages. He read them from beginning to end, and the last sentence was that the matter had been resolved. Siyu replied to the message and then received a voice call request. After Siyu answered the call, Yuan Xian's voice was heard. "The Fu Corporation has suppressed all the news that is unfavorable to feng shui. What needed to be clarified had already been clarified. Now that the Fu family and the Chang family had joined forces to pressure them, Apple Entertainment had to think twice. They simply suppressed the news and did not slander Fu Yun. They simply allowed them to spend money to suppress the news." Siyu raised his eyebrows. "Keep an eye on the internet. Don't let anyone make an issue out of Ruoruo." This Chairman Fu was really speechless. If he had not investigated thoroughly, he would have suspected that Feng Shui was the illegitimate daughter of Chairman Fu and his true love. How could a person who could run his family's business so well not be able to see through the people around him? "Understood," Yuan Xian said. "The few young men who came to secretly film today have confessed that someone leaked the news to them. However, they do not know who leaked it to them. We have tried to trace it, but we can't find the source of the information. Ask them to keep their mouths shut." "Understood. The news of you being there will be exposed sooner or later. You should prepare to leave." Anyone who wanted to investigate would be able to find out where Siyu and the rest were filming the show. They could not stay there any longer. "I have a plan." After coaxing Wan to sleep, Fu Yun lay in bed and did not feel sleepy. Although she said that she did not care, in the dead of the night, she could not help but be affected. These people had a great influence on the original owner of her body, so much so that she felt irritated. If it were not for her gentle personality, she might not have been able to suppress her anger and scold Fu Zonghong. Fu Yun lay in bed and thought about it. The more she thought about it, the more irritated she became. Old memories flashed through her mind. She tried to control herself not to think about it, but the more she thought about it, the more energetic she became. She did not dare to toss and turn as she was worried that she would wake one up. In the end, she quietly got out of bed and walked out of the room in the dark to the courtyard to clear her head. The lights in the living room were dimly lit, and there was a little light in the courtyard. Fu Yun quietly moved a small stool to sit under the eaves. She looked at the night sky and fell into a daze. Can't sleep? A low voice suddenly came from behind her. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.